You do know that he is coming back to work today? The lieutenant asked. Yeah, I know. Please don't tell me you are putting him in my platoon, the sergeant said. He isn't going back on patrol. He is going to be working with internal affairs, the lieutenant replied. I'm giving you a head up so that you can warn your men. I do not want any harassment. Couldn't they put him somewhere else? The sergeant asked. We aren't that large of a department, the lieutenant replied. If he weren't a hero, we could toss his butt out altogether. You know how it would look if we fired him now with or without cause. I guess the rat squad is the place for him if we have to keep him. At least this time we will know he is a rat, the sergeant said. Come on, all the guys he took down needed it. They weren't just looking the other way, they were dealing, Lieutenant Billy said. Still he ratted out cops that just ain't done, the sergeant said. Of course it is. People roll on cops all the time. We just find a way to make it go away. In his case, it stuck. He did his job, the lieutenant said. Then he's a junkie, the sergeant said. He went to rehab, and he has been declared fit for duty. He is coming back as part of the new Internal Affairs Unit. The Department of Justice is going to be watching us. If we keep screwing up, we are all going to be out of a job, the lieutenant said. So like it or not, he will be working here. He will be in your roll call, and after that he will be supervised by the detective unit. So when does he start? The sergeant asked. In about 5 minutes. So you need to work on a welcome back speech, the lieutenant replied. While the meeting was happening in the lieutenant's office, Roger Everhart entered the assembly room. When he entered the room, all the conversations stopped. He had pretty much expected that reaction to his return to duty. A little of the cold reception was because he had been in rehab, but mostly it was because the other cops saw him as a traitor. It was bad enough that he had testified against several cops. Those who had sold dope from their squad cars were the worst of them. His return to duty was as a detective with the newly formed Internal Affairs Department. The unit was formed in the hopes that a reorganization of the department could be done from within. The Department of Justice was talking about coming in with a big broom if the department couldn't clean its own house. Roger was pretty sure that it was the only reason he hadn't been fired. To the DOJ, he was a hero. To the General Green Police Department, he was a rat and always would be. Well, to some of them, he was a junkie rat. He got hooked on crack while getting recruited by the cop gang. He documented the police gang's activities while he was smoking crack. He tried not to get hooked, but his body betrayed him. Roger spent 3 months in rehab while they were getting the plea deals worked out for the others. The men sitting on the jackpot gave a hell of a lot more information on the workings of the gang than Roger did. The leaders of the cop gang also gave up a lot of names the Roger hadn't even known existed. Roger figured he was responsible for about a fourth of the cops going inside over the dope. The other 3/4 were from one cop rolling up another cop. So there was more than enough credit or blame to go around. Whether it was credit or blame was dependent upon who one was talking with at the time. It seemed all the cops on the street blamed Roger, but the brass approved, or so they said. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Roger Everhart. This is Roger's first day back from a medical leave, and also his first day in the new Internal Affairs Bureau. Sergeant Graham said. It was the coldest greeting Roger had ever seen in the squad room. Even rookies got a "Hi, how are you?" Roger got nothing. It was what he had expected. He knew there was no sense in trying to be friendly, so he just smiled and waved his hand at them. He knew it was going to be a long time before he was allowed back into the club. Hell, it was possible that he never would be allowed back in. When the meeting ended, Roger went to find the Office of Internal Affairs. He needed a place to sit, and a telephone at the very least. He had wondered who the detective in charge would be. It turned out that his new partner was almost as much of a pariah. Good morning. My name is Detective First Class Hillary Bridges. I'm going to be your boss for a while, the overweight woman, hovering around 40 years old, informed him. Her father had been some kind of big deal cop back in the day. Everyone knew she had some departmental pull, but no one really knew where it came from or exactly how much juice she had. Since that was the case, everyone steered clear of her as well. The two of them had most likely been the first choices for the first every Internal Affairs unit. They were the two people the brass most likely wanted hidden away. Go for the guys who were already hated, Alex thought. Okay, Detective Bridges, Roger replied. Call me Hillary, she said. So Hillary, what do you want me to do first? Roger asked. He sure didn't want a long lecture from the detective in charge. He just wanted to go to work. I hope you get that this isn't an opinion job. We just gather facts, then carry them to the chief. He decides what to do with them, she said. I get it, Roger replied. I hope you do, she said. We have a new CC. CC? Roger asked. Civilian complaint, Hillary explained. One of our officers shot her dog last night. She says it was for no reason at all. Of course she said it in front of a TV camera. So what is our responsibility here? Roger asked. We are going to do a psychological profile of the dog, Hillary said with a straight face. Roger felt he was in for a total waste of at least the next 2 hours of his life. The first thing that they did was to interview the dog's owner. They found her in her small frame house 1 block off a major thoroughfare. So Mrs. Owens, could you tell me exactly what happened? Hillary asked. Where should I start? The 60-plus-year-old lady asked. Let me start by asking why the officer was on your property. The police report suggests he was at your door to investigate strange noises and smells coming from the house, the DIC suggested. I didn't know that when he knocked on the door. I tried to answer it. That's when Max ran past me. Max jumped up on the cop. The cop just shot him for no reason. How much does Max weigh? Roger asked. Vet said he weighs 65 pounds, the DIC said. He was a full-blooded pit bull, but he played fine with my grandkids and never hurt any of them. The homeowner said, I get that. I'm a dog lover, but you know he didn't see that officer as one of his puppies. You know that is how he would see your grandchildren. My guess is he went out that door snarling and showing his teeth. Roger said. Maybe. The complainant agreed. The interview, for all intents and purposes, ended on that admission. Our job is not to try to convince the complainant that she is wrong. It's just to gather facts. We are going to talk to the neighbors. The boss said once they were in the yard, 2 of the 3 neighbors who were home stated that they felt the dog was aggressive. The third one didn't even know the woman had a dog. I mind my own business, the man said when asked about the woman. You know something isn't right, don't you? Roger asked. No, I don't. The aggressive dog escaped her control and attacked the officer. The officer used good judgment when he shot it. That is sad, but it does happen, she said. That is what the facts show. There is more to it than that, Roger said. Like what? The boss asked. I don't know, but something, Roger said. I don't see that there is anything more about the complaint to investigate it. We have closed the complaint. There is nothing else to do except take the officer's statement. He will be in for the evening tour at 3 p.m. We can take his statement then, she said. I will show you how to write the report showing our findings. Finished and home by 5, Roger said. Exactly. She failed to understand why he acted like that was a bad thing. Once they were back at the office, she had Roger put his fresh eyes on some open cases. Things that are a little more serious than a dog attack, Hillary promised. These complaints seem to have been saved for us. She had a dual purpose for showing him the complaint file. It was supposed to show him there were a lot of complaints laying around. Also, there were things more important than the dog attack to deal with. Even so, Roger couldn't shake the uneasy feeling about the old lady and her house. From having spent a couple of years on the fringes of the drug culture, Roger knew that things were seldom what they seemed in that part of town. For instance, Roger knew that most drug labs or processing centers had a pit bull or 2 hanging around. The old woman didn't seem like a member of a drug gang, but things were never what they seemed. Next door to the old lady's house sat an abandoned house. Abandoned houses were common in that neighborhood. Usually they were a condemned rent house, which had failed to meet code. Once they could no longer be rented, the owners just let them slip farther and farther downhill. The house next door to the old lady was like that. Those houses were often used as dope houses. The way the cops got onto them was by the number of employees coming and going. Those visits made the house look suspicious rather than abandoned. A neighbor complained, and the cops raided the house. They usually found a meth lab or a drug cutting lab. Roger had an idea the old lady might be helping to hide a drug operation in the house next door. Hide in plain sight was the term that came to mind. When Roger went back to the house after work, he walked around the outside. If anyone was cutting or cooking drugs, they were hiding it well. There was no physical evidence of it from the outside. The grass was high and the power meter was gone. There was also no noise coming from the house. Roger went home to his tiny apartment. He tried to sleep that night, but it was difficult. He had urges he found difficult to fight off. It was old hat he fight them every night since he got clean. Finally, he was exhausted enough to sleep. Roger knew he couldn't do anything about the house from his new position, so he had to get some help. It was that, or just let it slip through the cracks. Letting it go was not an option for him. He had let the drug trade ruin his career and almost his whole life. He was determined to fight the drug dealers wherever he found them. They made their living off human misery. He felt that drugs were as big a threat as any other form of terrorism. He did not have a single friend on the department. There was no one in whom he could confide, so he did the next best thing. He found the most honest of the shady cops in Vice. Roger knew he was going to be giving up all credit for the bust. The cop to whom he gave his information would get all the credit if it panned out. He wanted to get ahead with the department, but getting the lab closed was more important to him. He was on a vendetta. The sergeant of the vice unit rushed by Roger at roll call the next morning. Roger slipped a note to him asking for a meeting. He wasn't at all sure that Mark would call. He went through his routine day checking out complaints from citizens imagining harassment by the police. There just didn't seem to be anything better to do. If there was, someone was for sure keeping him away from it. "What the hell do you want?" Mark from Vice asked. It was not the ideal way to begin a phone conversation. "Look, I know people lost their jobs because of my information, but it was the nature of the job." "You know that," Roger said. "Yeah, we all know it, but I don't for a minute believe that you didn't enjoy it. All those patrolmen you got busted, and let's not forget the dope and the girls. That had to be heady stuff for a junkie," he said. "Mark, I didn't get you," Roger said. "We both know I could have. I might not be a sergeant now if you had named me, but they wouldn't have fired me for looking the other way once for a friend. So don't even go there, and I certainly didn't become a junkie snitch," Mark said. "When you get through saying your piece, I got a tip for you. Considering the present lack of trust among my peers, I figured I needed someone else to make it happen. This has nothing to do with my last assignment." Roger said, "Tell me what you have." Mark demanded on the burner cell. "If we are going to talk about it, get yourself a disposable phone. The guys on the 5th floor are going to be tracking you." "This is a burner," Roger said, hanging up on Mark after passing along his suspicions. He felt better after the call, but not a lot. He wasn't doing the investigation, but he hadn't sold out to the do-nothing mentality either. Over the next 2 weeks, he suffered the silent insults of his fellow officers with a silence of his own. Roger felt that he would have to find a new career eventually. It looked as though police work wasn't going to work out for him. The detectives of all divisions used the same break room, so no one noticed a vice officer standing in line for coffee behind Roger. "Roger, meet me in the park for lunch," Mark said. Roger dug through the crap till lunch when he left the office to meet with Mark. "So what is happening on the tip?" he asked. "Wanted to tell you that I put a couple of guys to check the house." About midnight, a van pulled into the old lady's driveway. That van was a crew car for the 69th Street crew. "So there is an entrance to the house next door somewhere in the old lady's house," Roger suggested. "I did a walk around it the evening after the dog shooting. There are those half-basement windows in the rear, but there is no real slope in the lots there. I couldn't tell if the abandoned place has a basement or not," Roger said. "If it does, they would only have to tunnel 5 feet. Those 2 houses are almost connected. Yeah, you have the concrete between the houses to hold the roof of a tunnel up, so you wouldn't even need to brace it. So we look for a tunnel in the basement of the old lady's house. We are going to seal off all exits from both houses," Mark said. "Good. So when do you go?" Roger asked. "I'm leaving here and going back to the office to set up a raid for tomorrow," Mark said. Roger got the call on his burner phone at 3 p.m. that same day. "I'm standing here waiting to give the order to swoop in on them. Just about a minute from now, the armored car should be driving up," Mark said. "If I get there in 2 minutes, can I go in with you?" Roger asked. "The guys are going to think you are there as a member of IA," Mark said. "I can't have that. Whatever you do, they are going to see it as somehow sinister." "I'm sorry, Roger. I know it's your bust, but I can't have you here." "Okay," Roger said. "Not to mention if there is a gunfight, I would have to worry about who would they guys shoot first," Mark said. "Just do it right," Roger said. Roger knew his life as a cop was over at that moment. It would only be a matter of time until he was killed or forced out. The bust went down just as Roger expected. The vice unit rolled up on most of the gang before the word got out. They were processing the scene using the lab people, who had managed to avoid being tainted by Roger's investigation, so the evidence was solid. Mark had lied about the timing in order to keep the drug house raid a secret, even from Roger. Roger didn't mind. "The word is out that you were Vice's secret weapon on that abandoned house," Hillary suggested. "How did that happen?" Roger asked. "Mark put it in his request for a warrant," Hillary said with disapproval in her voice. "You should have told me of your suspicions. I told you something was wrong with the old lady's story, but you didn't want to hear it," Roger snapped. He might be leaving, but he would be damned if he went quietly, he thought. "I suppose it did sound that way to you. When you mentioned it to me, it was just a feeling you had. When you had the drug theory tied together with the house, you should have told me. I would have carried it forward, and I could have kept your name off the warrant. Mark used your past as leverage for the warrant," Hillary said, "and to cover his track if it went bad." "Okay, next time I will," Roger said. He most likely meant it. Mark could have left him hanging out to dry. "Good. Have you eaten?" Hillary asked. "Sure," Roger replied. "What did you eat?" she asked. "What is this?" Roger asked. Like a dating profile? You are too thin. You still look like a junkie, she said, not all that kindly. Hillary, it is none of your business, but I have only been out of rehab 2 weeks, Roger snapped. I'm sorry, but I'm just tired of being reminded of my past. Someone is always bring it up somehow. Hillary nodded because she didn't trust herself to speak. She walked back to her desk and began searching the file folders. Roger obviously made her very uncomfortable. He felt it, but didn't have any idea what to do about it. So he sat at the desk across from Hillary and began to read files. His burner phone rang. Hello, he said into it. Mark here, Everhart. I'm sorry, word is all over the station that you were the source of my information. I used you for the surveillance and the search warrant. I had to protect myself, since it was you. Mark said. Of course you did. God knows you couldn't trust me. Screw you, Mark. Roger knew his reaction was over the top even as he said it. Hillary didn't raise her eyes, even thought she must have heard. She continued to read her files. Suddenly, out of the blue, she said, he was right, you know. He was covering his butt. Everyone will do that, since you are a snitch and therefore not to be trusted. This whole department is an embarrassment to the whole damn state. You took down 22% of the department in that drug operation. It got so out of hand. Not even your handlers will touch you now. You went to the DEA for your deal and didn't allow them the chance to cut their losses. I know all that. I was there, remember. What's your point? Roger asked. My point is they picked the wrong man for their undercover operations. It was a power struggle inside the department and they all lost. Roger, no matter what they all say, you did the right thing, Hillary said with what passed as a smile from her. Yeah, I heard that a lot from the feds, but I still have to piss in a cup whenever they ask. Roger found that ironic, but he knew that it would help him stay clean. The rehab program he had chosen wasn't one of those easy breezy celebrity warm and fussy things. It was one run by the military on a Marine boot camp base. They had a drug problem bad enough to need a rehab for those soldiers worth saving. There were also DEA men coming out of deep cover. It was all very hush and pretty damn harsh. He was forced to eat real food. Even though he threw it up when he started to run, there were 20 of them in a group. Since they didn't exist, they had no designation. The physical exercise was brutal on their wasted bodies, but only a couple gave up. Those were transferred to a civilian program based on the warm and fuzzy model. Roger wanted to quit every time it came time for the run or an exercise period. They had meetings that were psych evaluations every day as well. He was forced into mandatory counseling sessions. He resisted them at first, but in the end, he embraced the stress relief of meditation. He was trying to learn a new way of thinking that would require a radical change in his lifestyle. In the end, what he was trying to do was just survive the day without the crack pipe. You have been staring at the same page of that same file for 5 minutes. Are you okay? Hillary asked. Yes, ma'am. Just meditating, he replied. Roger had an uneasy feeling about Hillary. He didn't get any vibe from her, and that was strange. Everyone had an aura. Hillary's was somehow just transparent, as if it didn't exist. He had no idea what to make of her. If you aren't involved in anything else, let's go for a ride. We need to talk to a college kid, she said. That sounds like fun, Roger said. What is the kid alleging? Her statement suggests she was asked for sexual favors from an officer, and when she refused, he arrested her for driving while intoxicated. Her blood screen did show a high level of THC, Hillary advised. Is this a he said, she said? Roger asked. We won't know till we interview everyone. I'm not sure the officer even knows he is being investigated, Hillary suggested. Roger managed to get his stiff, almost 6-foot frame from the too-low office chair. Once on his feet, he walked from the office to the unmarked car parked in the police parking lot. He hadn't been assigned a car because his driver's license had been revoked. It was for a drug arrest as part of building his cover story. He was awaiting a hearing by the Department of Motor Vehicles. Roger didn't mind all that much since Hillary was a good driver, but overly careful. He had purchased a 50cc motor scooter to get around town while he waited. It was a mother when it rained, but that's what his taxi fund was for. He couldn't exactly call a fellow officer for a ride. They found the college student at her family home. Hillary had called to set the interview, so she had her mother seated with her. I hope you don't mind my mother being here. She insisted that she be here, Alice informed them. Actually, we prefer it, Hillary said. Let's start with the facts that we all can agree on, shall we? First of all, Officer Gomez made a traffic stop on you the night of June 17th of this year. Is that correct? Hillary asked. Yes, I was on my way home from my fiend's house, Alice volunteered. Would you give me her name, please, for the record? Hillary asked. Do I have to? Alice asked. I'm afraid so. If this goes to trial, the lawyers will ask why we didn't do a thorough investigation, Hillary said. Tell her, honey, the mother said. Alice gave Hillary a name and address. She was beginning to look worried. Roger saw her aura go from yellow to red. He couldn't really see if, of course, but he could feel that she was lying, maybe about the friend. You and your friend were smoking pot, Hillary asked. It is legal to smoke marijuana, the mother said. Of course it is, but it is also an intoxicant under the law. It's just a matter of how much your daughter smoked. It might be legal to use, but it's not legal to drive an automobile under the influence of even a legal drug, Hillary said. So how much weed did you smoke? Yes, we shared a joint, Alice said. Just one. Hillary asked, the disbelief heavy in her voice. Is this about the officer's inappropriate conduct or the DUI charge? If you are investigating my daughter, I think she should have a lawyer. The girl's mother said. Do you feel you need a lawyer, Alice? Hillary made it sound as though if she got a lawyer she was guilty of the DUI and of lying about the officer, even though in theory one charge had nothing to do with the other, except she implied he would not have charged her if she had gone along. Well, Mom said even innocent people need lawyers, Alice replied, and her mother nodded her head. Before you ask for a lawyer, let me ask you one question. Do you feel that you were under the influence of THC? Hillary asked. Now my daughter does need a lawyer, the woman with Alice suggested. You want to stop for a milkshake? Hillary asked. No thanks, Hillary. I'm trying to stay fit, Roger said. You know Alice is guilty of the DUI. I'm sure she is trying to work a deal. Maybe, but being guilty of DUI does not mean the incident didn't happen just like she said. Hillary answered. The truth is we don't know what her version is since nobody would admit to drunken flirting in front of her mother. You do have a point. Why don't we pull Gomez's personnel record so we can see what kind of cop he is? Roger suggested. I already have. He has no disciplinary actions, but he has been transferred from one platoon to another twice in the last year. Something is going on with him, Hillary suggested. Why not ask him? Roger asked. Because Skinny Roger, a detective never asks a question unless he already has the answer, Hillary replied. Or at least thinks she does. I thought that was a lawyer, Roger said. Same kind of shit. You just mix enough things to which you know the answer with ones you don't know and hope to learn something's valuable at the end of the day, Hillary said. So it's time we took a chance. We can do more background after the interview, Roger suggested. Officer Gomez, my name is Officer Everhart. Is there anything you wish to say before we begin the official interview? Roger asked. Everybody knows who you are, so go ahead and crucify me, Gomez said. Hillary turned on the tape recorder. Present for the first interview with Patrolman Gomez is Officer Gomez, Detective First Class Hillary Bridges, and Detective Everhart. I am handing you a copy of the incident report for the arrest of Alice Belmont. Your report says that you were following Alice's car when you noticed she was having problems staying between the lines of her traffic lane. Is that correct? Roger asked. If that's what it says, Gomez replied. You know our report can be completed in a day, or it can drag on for weeks. The more cooperation we get, the faster it ends, Hillary said. Yes, ma'am. Gomez looked across at Roger and asked, do you get off on this? Are you asking if I get off helping cops in the jackpot climb out like I'm trying to do now? Maybe you are asking about the lying scum dope dealers who happen to wear the same uniform I did. Which are you asking, Officer Gomez? Roger had raised his voice. Roger, a word, Hillary said as she stood. In the hall she asked, are you okay? Never better, Roger said, taking deep breaths. Okay, you want to go somewhere and meditate? She asked sarcastically. When this is over, he said, turning back for the door. Well, Gomez, I understand why you have had 3 parallel transfers in your 3 years, Hillary said. I was going to ask, but it's obvious. You don't play well with others. Does that include the public? I have never had a citizen complaint until now, he said. Not bad, but most cops never get a citizen complaint. Let me suggest a scenario that seems highly plausible. Hillary suggested. Alice came out of a known party pad. You followed her to her car, just to be sure no one bothered her, because she was alone. You weren't quite sure how high she was until she tried to drive. She weaved and so you stopped her. She tried to flirt with you, asking you to let her go. You didn't respond and took her to jail. The proper procedure for a cop. She has to tell mommy something. So of course her story wanders to keep mommy off her back. Or, Roger said, you did all the right things till she pulled over. When you went up to her you ranted and raved about drunk entitled college kids. Then calmed down and offered a trade for her release with a warning. You knew she was high so she probably wouldn't even remember. Alice said no. So you took her in and booked her. That does play just as well, Hillary said. So only you and Alice were out there. Oh yes, there was the body cam and the dash cam. Hillary tossed a screen grab on the table. It showed Gomez leaning against the car shot from the dash cam. That looks more like you were relaxed. The body cam is mysteriously offline. Roger said, this frame shows what seems to be you in a heated discussion with Alice. So would you like to change your story? Roger asked. Look, you were a patrolman before you became a rat. You know how it is, they flirt with you hoping a cleavage flash will keep them out of jail. She offered me sex to let her go. I said no, and I guess I lost it on her. Point is, nothing happened. I took her in. No, the point is, did you solicit sex from a perpetrator, or did she offer you sex? Right now it looks pretty much like she is telling the truth. If she is, then she has grounds for a lawsuit. We want to clear you, but I can't without that body cam footage. It's all circumstantial. You got nothing, he said. When it comes to bad cops, Roger here is like a dog with a bone, Hillary said. Do you really want him interviewing your friends and neighbors? Hillary asked. I don't give a shit who he talks to, Gomez said. And I ain't answering no more questions without a union rep or a lawyer. You are entitled to either or both. This is not a criminal investigation, but it can be, Hillary said. Back at their desks, Roger was meditating, trying to pull it back together. Hillary was reading the Gomez file. He is guilty of something, she said. Sure, being an arrogant a-hole, but that's not a crime. You know, if Mommy didn't have to know, the girl wouldn't have mentioned it at all. If she was really upset, she would have been shouting it at the booking officer at the time. Maybe she was, Hillary suggested. Let's get the booking officer in for a chat. Why not catch him at work? It would be a lot easier, Roger said. And not nearly as intimidating, Hillary explained. Roger made the call to the booking officer. He explained what it was about just to give him time to gather any information he had. Roger knew there were cameras in the booking room. They had been installed under the pretext that they were there for the officer's protection. It was like him peeing in the cup. Roger had spent 3 months in rehab and 2 weeks at home trying to find a way to cope with the shit that was rolling down on him. Most recovering junkies asked for the shit they got. Roger hadn't. He had been a victim as much as any of the victims that came through the door. Unlike them, he didn't try to blame his current situation on anyone. He was just trying to cope with the fallout. Deputy Alan Watkins, Hillary greeted him. Roger sat quietly in his chair while Hillary explained the camera and tape recordings being made. You do know why you were here? She asked. Yeah, of course. I looked her up on the computer. I brought the footage along and a laptop to show you that no one touched her. I understand there is a sexual harassment claim pending. I can prove there were no irregularities in the booking. We are interested in her actions and demeanor while being booked, Hillary said. Like, did she make any accusations about the officer? We get that all the time. You know, they come in with their tits hanging out and claim they have been harassed. She was a little worse than the usual. I'll have your badge followed by some pretty colorful language. It's all on the tape. Is she saying a deputy harassed her while she was in our custody? No, not at all, Roger said. He stared at Roger. Good cause nothing happened to her at the jail. I got minute-by-minute tapes of her. On the way out, he pulled Roger aside. They say you are a junkie cop, the deputy declared. So they do. I've been clean for months. I never had the addictive personality, but the drugs got to me anyway. It was the job, Roger said, feeling the need to explain. They say once a junkie, always a junkie. I hope you prove them wrong, he said, extending his hand. I'm issuing an inconclusive report. There is no direct evidence against him. I am going to have his duty captain review the tapes. He will probably be transferred again, Hillary said. Not too many places left for him to go, Roger said. School resource officer, she suggested. Oh yeah, if I had a kid. He is the kind of officer I would want at her school, Roger said. You do make a good point, Hillary said. So they were pretty rough on you. Are you coping? They are me and I am them, Roger said mysteriously. Shit, she said with a smile. What does that mean? Hating them would be hating myself. I am trying not to hate myself, Roger said. I am trying to understand myself so that I can forgive myself. Understanding is the first step in forgiveness. That doesn't sound like one of the steps in the program, Hillary suggested. It is in my program. I can't see me asking forgiveness of the people I injured while I was using, Roger explained. They were mostly dirty cops and drug dealers. From the street to the drug houses, I hurt them all and have no regrets. Hillary just nodded her understanding. Hillary, I need a couple of hours off this morning, Roger said. Of course, is everything all right? She asked. It was obvious to Roger that over the course of the past month, she had developed a bond with Roger. A bond between the high school nerd. She had been a nerd without a doubt, and the kid nobody liked. They bonded from the necessity for human contact. They would have never been friends, if not for their mutual outsider status. My sister is going to be passing through town. It will be the first time I have seen her sober in a long time, Roger said. Oh, where does she live? Hillary asked. She and her husband live down in Capital City. Last time I saw her, it was about 6 months into the investigation. I was using and had pretty much given in to my emotions, but not in a good way, Roger said. A lot of shit from our childhood came up in front of her husband. I see. So is she your older or younger sister? Hillary asked. Older, Roger said. She blamed herself for some of the constant arguments between us while I was using. It didn't help that I seriously threatened to kill her husband for shouting at her. I told him that I was a cop and could kill him and get away with it. I know he filed a complaint. It is in the box over there, Hillary said. How many complaints are in my file? Roger asked. Oh, it was all expunged, but I'm a pack rat, she admitted. Anyway, she is passing through with the kids, and I'm going to take them to lunch, Roger suggested. Why didn't you go into the witness protection program? I'm sure DOJ could make room for you. Hillary asked, changing the subject. Nobody wants to bother with me. Everybody I got good. Almost all of them flipped on somebody else. Seems there is no honor among dopers. I always expected to come back to the job, but I'm rethinking that now, Roger admitted. Surely you knew better than to expect a brass band, she replied. I expected it to be rough at first, but it's been 2 months and it just goes on and on. I don't really mind, except that I haven't made any friends in the last 2 months, except you. He suddenly laughed. I'm not even sure we are friends. I think we are, and if I had a daughter, to be honest, I would discourage her from dating you, Hillary said. There is such a thing as too much honesty, Roger said. So are you taking her to lunch somewhere nice with all that drug money? Hillary asked with a smile. I knew it, Hilly. You have been dying to ask me, so go ahead, he demanded. You knew I would look into your finances. It's just what I do, she said. So ask, Roger said. I have nothing to hide. I know where it comes from. I just don't know how much you have? Hillary asked. $40K a year from the PD. Another $50K gets deposited in my account by the DOJ. It comes from their drug asset recovery fund. It's like winning the lottery. They don't want me to take it all at once. Probably afraid you will go back into business for yourself, Hillary said. That is probably it. Anyway, the reward program will pay out for the rest of my life. They wanted to be sure that I had the money to disappear. If it got too nasty, Roger admitted. The jackpot would tempt you back if you had that kind of money all at once. So how much is in the fund? She asked. A lot is all I'm willing to say, Roger suggested. So why don't you buy a fancy sports car? Hillary asked. The point of any vehicle is to take me from one place to another. It doesn't matter about the vehicle. The journey is the thing, he said. More of that Zen crap? She asked sarcastically. Roger could never get used to her talking like that. My own version, Roger said. Since I'm admitting to snooping, what's up with that place where you live? Hillary asked. When I came out of rehab, they told me to move. To get away from everyone I had known during my days using. I bought a house in the country where I could hide from my old self. Then realized I couldn't hide from my real enemy because I carried him with me, Roger explained. Is there an end to this story? Hillary asked. Not a happy one, I'm afraid. I rented the 3-bedroom, 2-bath house to some college professors who had never heard of me. I moved into the storage building at the rear of the lot. I found that I don't need much space. So you have almost $100K a year income, and you live in a place no larger than my living room? She asked. Well, when you say it like that, Roger said with a smile. Part of my therapy was to avoid buying drugs. In the end, the drugs just makes more drugs. Things seem to breed. You buy a new car, then you have to have a garage, and so it goes. So is your sister's husband coming? Hillary asked, returning to the original discussion. No, they are living apart for the next year. The separation leading to the divorce. I'm sure I was part of the strain on her marriage. She had to be worried about me constantly. After all, I was her junkie kid brother. You weren't a junkie, Hillary corrected him. Sure I was, Roger said. Lunch with Margaret was a disaster. She kept mentioning things about his junkie past, then apologizing for it. No matter how many times he told her it was fine, she kept on and on. Thankfully, the time came when she had to leave. She pecked him on the cheek, climbed up into the seat of the Honda SUV, and rode off into the midday sun. Roger had been gone only an hour longer than his ordinary lunch hour. It hardly seemed worth writing down, but he filled out the comp time forms. 1 hour of his accumulated comp time was taken up by the less than satisfying lunch. When Roger returned from lunch, Hillary informed him he had a call from the sheriff's department. She had taken a number since he didn't have his cell phone. Yes, Deputy Sykes, please, He sat listening to elevator music for 5 minutes. Mr. Everhart, sorry to keep you waiting. I don't suppose anyone was able to reach you, Sykes asked. Reach me about what? Roger asked. There has been a fire. The volunteer fire department responded, but the house was a total loss, Sykes. The fire department said there were signs of arson. You know, I got to ask, where were you at 11 a.m. today? I was at work till about 11:30, then I rode my scooter to Marco's Mexican restaurant, where I sat listening to May's sister, which for about 2 hours. I'm sure the staff will remember us. I answered your question. So tell me, is the family who are living in the house all right? Roger asked. They are devastated. They lost everything. They were just lucky no one was home. The state fire department arson investigators think it might have been a firebomb through the window, Sykes added. Do you know anyone who would do that? No idea. If there is anything else, just call me, Roger said. Roger, did someone burn your house? Hillary asked. She had been eavesdropping, of course. That seems to be the case. They aren't sure about much, but somebody might have tossed a bottle of gasoline through the window, Roger explained. Do they have any suspects? Hillary asked. You were kidding, right? Roger asked with a laugh. I guess you were right. There are far too many people with motives. Anyone threaten you lately? She asked. Not lately, Roger said, almost as if it never happened. So what are you going to do? Hillary asked. I wasn't invested in the house. It was just a thing. Nobody got hurt, so it's not worth worrying about, Roger said. He tried hard to believe what he was saying. The family that rents it is pretty upset, I'm sure. I wonder if they had renter's insurance? Hillary asked. I don't have any idea. I'll try to help them out, but they won't be coming back. I'm not going to rebuild. Somebody might get killed in the crossfire, Roger said. So you do plan to do something? Hillary asked. Just to defend myself. It is a natural reaction to danger to fight back, Roger said. Only for some people. Some people would decide to move to Alaska, Hillary said. So which one do you think? What? Roger replied. Was it a warning or a revenge thing? She asked. I don't know that we are working on anything that would warrant this kind of response, Roger said. Unless you are running a secret investigation. You know, I'm not the secretive type. Besides, this was on you, she replied. Hell, boss, maybe the professor gave some kid a failing grade. Roger was trying to make light of it. You know, these rich college kids can be vindictive as well. Roger used his desk phone to call the professor. He didn't answer, but his wife did. You might have told us people were trying to kill you. So the sheriff's deputies have spoken with you? Roger asked. You a-hole. Our dog Wendy died in that fire. She said. I am terribly sorry about Wendy. I wish there was something I could do. Roger paused a moment, then asked, Do you have anywhere to go? We haven't talked about that yet, she said calmly. Let me know if you need anything. I will of course refund your deposit and the most recent rent payment. If there is anything else, just let me know. I'm serious. I want to help. Thank you for that, but my husband is a big believer in insurance, so I'm sure we can manage, she said. Please relay the message to your husband and have him call me anytime, Roger said. And again, I'm sorry about Wendy. Damn, Roger said angrily after the call. Hillary noted that he hadn't been upset before the call, but he definitely was after. What's the problem? She asked. They lost their dog. Hell no, their dog was killed. She isn't missing. Roger said. Are we going to look into this? It isn't our jurisdiction, Hillary said. You know better. It's a crime against your partner, Roger said, fighting to keep control. We have an ODW report to complete before we can do anything. It can wait until tomorrow, since no one was hurt. What the hell is an ODW? Roger asked. Officer discharged weapon, and you need to meditate. You are working yourself into a state, Hillary said. When did it happen? Roger asked. Early this morning, she said. I have the report, we just need to interview the officer. The detectives cut her loose since her shift had ended. We can go to her house. I'll call to arrange it, unless you want to see the damage to your house first. There is no need for that. The damage will still be there at 5, Roger said. Give me a few minutes to meditate, then we can go. Roger sat at his desk and tried to analyze how he felt and to cleanse his mind of those thoughts. All he managed to do was suppress his urge to kill someone. After 3 minutes, he stood. Let's do this thing. They found Officer Ellie Smith waiting for them at her apartment. Hillary introduced them while Roger meditated. He wasn't able to shake the urge to do someone harm. So what happened? Hillary asked. I know you are a cop and have been trying to work out the details with the detectives. I don't want that. I just want you to give me the facts as you know them. So let's start at the beginning. Yes, ma'am. I got a radio call at 0600. The dispatcher said that there was an unknown trouble call at an abandoned building. When I arrived, someone took a shot at the cruiser. I returned fire. The shooter must have gotten away. I called for help and pretty much hid behind my car till help arrived. The patrol sergeant arrived and organized a search. They didn't find anything. I think they were going to search again now that the sun is up. Did you get a good look at the shooter? Hillary asked. No, I saw a figure standing outside a doorway. I'm just glad he was a terrible shot. Doesn't look as though you were any better, Roger said. I tried, she said almost in tears, but not quite. While Hillary finished her interview, Roger took stock of the 20-something slightly broad in the beam young woman. There were no obvious signs of her sexual preference, but he somehow got the vibe that she was at least bisexual, if not a pure lesbian. Not that it made any difference. She was a cop and therefore felt she had to cut Roger a wide berth. At least she didn't seem openly hostile toward him. She obviously had been one of the new hires. Half the force seemed to have been hired since the investigation began. It hadn't been an instant thing. The house cleaning had been an ongoing thing. Once the DOJ got into it full scale, they held off for almost a year, then brought them all down. It took almost a year longer to work out the details of all the deals. That whole time Roger was still in deep cover. When they went to trial, he came out and got clean. They just hadn't needed his testimony after all. His handler at the DOJ explained it by saying, "Your testimony won't really help. After all, you were a junkie at the time." "How long you been a cop, Ellie?" Roger asked. 8 months. Does that have anything to do with it? She asked angrily. Not at all. I was just looking for answers. You know that the bullet went through the door right about where you would have been sitting if you had been in the car, so you must have been out of the car. That is what I said, weren't you listening? She said sarcastically. I must have missed it. So you arrive at an empty building expecting there to be trouble, but you leave your patrol car without having seen anything. Why would you do that? Don't you usually drive around the building and call for backup before you walk around it? I was planning to rattle the door, she said. Ah, that explains it. Why didn't you wait for backup? Roger asked again. I thought it was a prank call, she said. A prank at 6 a.m. Well, you probably had some reason to think that, Roger said with doubt in his voice. Roger, why she got out of the car had nothing to do with the facts, Hillary said. Since Roger was already the bad guy, they had fallen into the habit of running the bad cop, good cop routine from the very beginning. Why don't you wait in the car? I will finish up in here, Hillary suggested. While he sat in the car meditating, Hillary pried more information from Ellie Smith. She's lying, Roger said when she returned to the driver's seat. I know, I'm just not sure about what or why, Hillary said. Simple. Surely you haven't forgotten how boring midnight shift is? Roger asked. Okay, but someone has to call in the complaint. It was a man's voice, Hillary replied. She did it. If she was smart, she did it with a throw-down piece, but she did it, Roger insisted. You don't trust cops much, do you? She asked. They haven't given me much reason to trust them, Roger said. Almost half the department has been on the job less than 2 years. They are still feeling their way along. Then we have to sort out who is who, she said. We owe it to the people of this town. Yeah, we have screwed over them long enough, Roger agreed. We got an hour and we are out of the office. You ready to see your house? She asked. They pulled into the drive which served both his rental house and his tiny house. Deeper into the 2-acre lot the storage building was located. That building had been renovated into a tiny studio apartment. The house was in the condition previously described by Deputy Sykes. The roof had collapsed and the walls had crumbled. Since the house was occupied, the ashes were typical. Things like the stove and refrigerator were lying there visible among the ruins of the kitchen cabinets. Dishes we covered in smoke residue, but for the most part intact. Before you bulldoze the remains, you should set a date for the renters to come to sift through the ruins, Hillary suggested. You are right, of course, Roger said. The place is in ruins. It looks a lot like the pictures on TV of the houses in Gaza. Yeah, a little, she agreed. I'm not going bulldoze it, all right. I expect that the county turned off the water. I will have to get a plumber in again to isolate the house lines, then turn the water back on. I need to check the power to my apartment. You want to see where I live? Roger asked. Sure, Hillary said. The place is going to be a mess, Roger said. But just pull on down to the end of the drive. A stand of pine trees surrounded the small barn-type workshop. When Roger decided to move into it, he had it rehabilitated. The shell repairs and upgrades had cost him almost $12K, but it had been worth the money. The roof structure was good for a big wind, and the roofing material was a 50-year metal roof. It might need painting and resealing sometime, but it should be good for many years of service. The 2 window opening, one each side, had been tripled in size. Then thermal pane windows had been installed. The two garage doors had been removed first, then a sliding door filled the front space, the rear opening simply been enclosed. The floor had been brick pavers for years, so nothing much had to be done to it. The tiny bathroom was all shower stall with a small toilet along the rear wall. There was 2 drains fitted into the floor. One drain was for the waste from the toilet and ran directly into the septic tank. All the other water was gray water and ran from the kitchen sink and showered directly into the sprinkler system, which drained into the yard. Roger explained it all to Hillary. I see you have a full-size kitchen, even if it is compact. Not really. The refrigerator is an apartment size. It is about 3 times the size of a dorm refrigerator, but still a third less space than a typical refrigerator. The sink is full-sized. It is deep, but not a double-space hog sink. The counter beside it doubles as a 2-burner cooktop and a small freezer underneath. Roger explained. Roger flipped the switch and discovered he had power. He wasn't surprised since his line was independent of the house's power lines. And the unmade bed? Hillary asked, taking him back to the tour. A sofa bed, with 2 tables built in for storage. Roger explained. I didn't have time to turn it into a sofa before I left for work. I guess if you don't have a lot of things, as you claim not to have, it would work, Hillary admitted. Yes, now I have to spend more money on security, Roger said. I think that would be a wise investment, Hillary agreed. Couple of CCTV cameras would go a long way to giving you peace of mind. Motion detectors inside a fence maybe. Something like that for sure. Anyway, we need to get back to the office. It's past quitting time, Roger said. Yes, it is, Hillary agreed. They were on the drive back to the officer when Hillary said, You know, Roger, we get along well. I don't usually play nice with others, Hillary said. Yeah, that was the rumor around when we were both on patrol. Word was you were a witch and stickler for the rules, Roger informed her. No wonder you wound up in internal affairs. I suppose it was inevitable, Hillary agreed. I do respect boundaries. I'm not sure you are the perfect partner for me. We for sure are not soulmates, she said, stating the obvious. You mean all those rumors about sex in the office aren't true, Roger said. Not with you anyway, she said. To change the subject, I saw a loft but no ladder, and it appears empty. The ladder is stored the outside wall. The loft is supposed to be just a bed on the floor for guests. I probably will turn it into a secure storage area. I can put a bed up there if you ever need a place to crash. If I ever need a place to stay, I would expect you to be a gentleman and sleep in the loft and allow me to sleep in on the sofa bed, she replied. Fat chance, he said, smiling at her. Roger was on the scooter and headed home when he caught sight of the car in his mirrors. The car stayed on his tail most of the way home. When he pulled into the drive, the car pulled in behind him. Roger pulled the scooter off to the side, stopped, then walked back to the car. Something I can do for you? He asked the very professional-looking middle-aged woman in the power suit. Can we talk? It is important, she asked. Important to who? He asked. Whom? She said. Damn, some burns my house. Then they send a grammar Nazi to protect me. Isn't Hillary bad enough? He asked. You are lucky I'm not the assassin, or you would be dead, she said. Death comes to us all. It's not how long we live, it's how well we live. Roger said. I heard you see yourself as some kind of philosopher, the bleached blonde suggested. Not really, I just think out loud a lot. Makes me sound like I am trying to understand the universe, Roger said. Then what are you doing? The blonde asked. Just trying to stay clean, Roger said. So who are you, DOJ, US Marshal, or CIA? None of the above, Acme Security, she said. I was told you might be looking for a system. I have been contracted to set up such a system. I am not buying it, Roger said. I had a house fire in this morning, and you were here at 7 p.m. That's just way too much bullshit for anyone to swallow. I don't know who arranged for me to set up the system. I just worked for Acme, and I do plan to arrange a security system for you. And who pays for the service? Roger asked. The client, of course, and since you are not the client, why should you worry about it? She asked. Because the client will have the keys to the back door, Roger said. Good point. Can we at least go to your house to discuss it? I don't like discussing this kind of thing in the drive with the sun going down, she said. Sure, why not? Roger said. She drove down the drive, leaving him to mount his scooter. When he arrived, she was already out of the car and looking at the storage building. You should have left the overhead doors. It wouldn't have been so obvious that it was being used as a house, she said. No sense crying over spilled milk, Roger suggested. You should consider bulletproof glass in those doors and windows. You are highly susceptible to sniper attack, she said. So I need to worry about snipers and fire bombers, great, Roger said. And the glass is coated to be reflective. Impossible to see through during the daylight hours. You knew you are still vulnerable at night, she said. Of course I do, but so is the sniper. Anyway, they're going to get me if they want to get me. I might want to take one or two with me though, he said. If that is what you want, then that is what I will design for you, she said. They had moved to the kitchen table for the conversation about security. He even had the instant brew coffee cooking. The coffee maker was a plastic mesh coffee holder which normally held enough coffee grounds for 1 cup. That evening it held enough for 2 cups. The coffee process was labor-intensive, but he enjoyed looking out the window in a trance while it heated in the microwave. After 3 minutes in the small microwave, it was coffee. Sorry, I don't have any cream. I have some of that artificial sweetener though, Roger said. You don't seem like the kind of guy to use no-cal sweetener, the blonde said. I don't, hun. I use it because the ants won't touch that, Roger said with a laugh. If you're going to drink my coffee, you need to tell me your name. Sorry, my name is Rose. Just Rose, she said. Okay, Rose, you have been sketching. So what have you got? He asked. Most of the time we do a threat assessment based on who the likely attackers will be. Your threat is from cops and gangs, so it has to be for the more sophisticated of the two, the cops. The upside is the cops will likely be working in no more than groups of 2. They know the more people who know, the greater the risk someone talking. A gang might come in a car full, probably 4 or 5, she said. Roger listened and said, sounds like a good guess, he said. I don't think it will be pros, since your damage has already been done. It might be vengeance, but your information is worthless. Rose said, you seem to know a lot about me for a contractor, Roger said. It's my job. I read your file after the firebombing. So shall we discuss your security plan? No thanks, I don't want to live in a fortress, Roger said. It's either that or get lost, Rose said. Those aren't the only options. If you want to put a CCTV with a view of the drive and the house, that would be good. I would need an internet feed, so I can see what is going on here when I'm away. A couple of bring outdoor spotlight with motion sensors would be good as well. A beeper would be good as well, Roger said. Go with one more thing, I can recommend it. A pressure pad in the drive to alert you of a car if you aren't monitoring the computer, Rose suggested. Okay, do it then, Roger said. It will all be up and running tomorrow when you get home for lunch, she said. I'll believe that when I see it, Roger said. So what are you doing for dinner? Rose asked. I'm going to open the freezer and head a frozen dinner. Why do you have a better offer? Roger asked. To be honest, I don't know how much better the offer is, but I will take you to dinner. Hell, you can even spend the night with me, she said. Why would you do that? Roger asked. I need to keep you alive at least until I get paid. There is also that lost puppy look in your eyes. My roommate will find that attractive, I'm sure, Rose answered. Okay, but pizza first. Roger's response was, man does not live by bread alone. But pizza, that's another story entirely. Rose decided that she should use her cell phone to order takeout pizza. She also decided that they could stop to pick it up on the way to her apartment. After Roger retrieved the pizza, she drove straight to a tall concrete condo building near the governmental plaza. Nice place, Roger said upon seeing the inside. Corporate welfare, Rose explained. It's owned by the company. When someone higher up the food chain comes along, I can be asked to move out. In the meantime, we can enjoy the view. I never get tired of looking down on the little people, she said with a laugh. She went into the galley kitchen before opening the pizza box. The pizza place had included paper plates with the order. The only thing for Rose to do was open the Gulf Coast boutique beer. It's really good pizza, but most any pizza is good. 3 months on the farm left me with a high regard for familiar junk food, Roger explained while waving a slice around. Those 3 months probably saved your life, Rose replied. Yes, I agree. Of course, I'm not sure what to do with the rest of it. Like they all say, I'm just climbing the mountain 1 rock at a time. Or is it moving ahead 1 mile at a time? Roger asked. I get it. You are a walking cliche, Rose suggested. 2 pieces of pizza and Roger was through. So where is this roommate that might like me? Instead of answering, Rose went to one of the bedrooms to open the door. A black cat jumped up at her repeatedly. It was the way a small dog would have greeted her. Roger Everhart, meet Bella the cat, she said. She is good company and she doesn't empty my refrigerator. That would make her the perfect roommate, all right, Roger agreed. She has on occasion stolen the heart of a boyfriend, Rose suggested. Now that we have eaten, I'll show you to your room, while I design your system. The bedroom was half the size of his tiny house. It also had its own bathroom. The bathroom connected to the hallway as well. That feature allowed it to be either a private bath or the main bath, depending on which door was locked. I'm going to order up your security, so watch TV or something. I don't care what you do, just leave me to it, she demanded. Does this building have Wi-Fi? Roger asked. Of course, its dream is called, the building password is Blue Sky. she informed him. Roger went to his room to check his email and to answer Hillary's inquiry as to his health. After his decision not to purchase the little blue pills online, he moved on to check the name Acme Security. He found several entries, but nothing with a local address. She could be a local contractor with no official status. She could also be an agent with any of a half-dozen government agencies who were tasked with keeping tabs on him. They would be one step closer to him for sure with their own cameras in place. His plan was simple: allow them to put all the hardware in place, then hijack the software. He was up late watching a TV show from the night before. The show was an international phenomena. It was a very offbeat cop show. It was so offbeat it ran in 3 different versions, in 3 different languages. The show had exactly the same plot line, and even the same characters, but somehow each version was a little different. He watched the latest 2 episodes because he had missed the previous episode. That was the beauty of the online TV shows. They were all there waiting for me. That and the variety of the offerings. There was everything from gold mining in Greenland show to a show about chasing Bigfoot. There were docudramas, as well as the scripted TV shows from all over the world. "What are you doing in here all alone?" Rose asked, peeking in his door. "Internet juice," he said. She walked over to see the screen on his laptop. "So you find house renovations erotic?" she asked. "Well, you have to admit there is something sexy about a building contractor with her tits hanging out," Roger said. "I will admit that it is not something you see every day," Rose commented. "So are you going to be okay?" "I would be better if you would come to bed," he said. "The idea was to keep you safe, not to entertain you," Rose said sternly, but without any trace of anger. "There, I will watch TV till I fall asleep," Roger said. "I usually watch some wilderness docudrama till I all asleep," she said, leaving the room. "By the way, I lock my door and sleep with a 10mm pistol. I usually sleep in a Kevlar vest, just so you know," he said with a smile. It was 6:30 a.m. when he heard dishes rattling in the galley kitchen. He stumbled out of bed, took his clean underwear into the bath, and then stepped into the shower stall. He stood under the stream of hot water for only a couple of minutes before he turned off the water. He wore the jeans from the day before, but with a clean black t-shirt. He would be tempted to wear his gang vest if he had it with him. Instead, he wore the lightweight jacket that marked him as a cop. It was an old-style cotton bush jacket, the kind with lots of pockets. "So are you going to run in that?" Rose asked. "I didn't bring my running suit and shoes, so I'm going to walk 2 blocks to work," Roger said. "If you want, I can scramble you an egg," Rose suggested. "No thanks, I have to have a cop breakfast," Roger explained. "What's that?" Rose asked. "A bagel and bad coffee at my desk," Roger said. "Okay, come by after work and I'll give you a ride home. I can explain the workings of your new security system," Rose suggested. "That's fine," Roger said, turning toward the door. Once he arrived at work, he found the bagel on his desk, just as he expected. He took his coffee cup from the drawer, then to the break room to rinse it before filling it with bad coffee. Hillary entered their office space with a file in her hand. "I got the employment records for Ellie Smith. I looked them over. Now I want your opinion," Hillary said. "Sure, why not?" Roger agreed. After Hillary handed him the file, he began reading it. According to the file, Ellie was 25 years old. Her previous work experience was clerk in a convenience store. She did it at night while she went to the criminal justice course at the community college. Her college scores had been excellent. She was most likely on the fast track to being a detective herself. "She sure looks good on paper," Roger said. "I thought so as well, but something bothered you about her story. Have you decided what it was?" Hillary asked. "If you wanted to kill a cop, why 1 bullet through a car door? I can see emptying a clip at her then running away. But why only 1? Was she a random target of opportunity, or a setup just for her?" Roger asked. "The shooter couldn't have known she would be the one answering the call," Hillary said. "Come on, he knows what sector she is patrolling and what shift she is on," Roger said. "Okay, so there are 3 cars patrolling that area," Hillary said. "Scanner, and he knows her call sign. If someone else gets the call, he disappears without shooting or leaving a trace. If she gets it, he fires the 1 shot in her door to frighten her," Roger said. "If it wasn't her, it was a friend or relative who doesn't want her to be a cop. We need to look at her mother, father, sister, brother, or boyfriend," Hillary said. "And her? Nobody heard the shots, so we can't tell if it was just the 1 shot, or if she returned fire after the door hit," Roger said. "Even if she did return fire, she couldn't have had a good sight picture. Shooting into the dark was a bad idea," Hillary said. "If it was someone trying to scare her, it would account for the fact that they shot an empty car." Hillary said. "Yes, but did they target her, or just a random cop shooting? We really need to know that. Let the detectives work on the random theory. We can work on the Ellie angle," Roger suggested. Okay, what is left of today, and tomorrow then we walk away, Hillary said. Fair enough, Roger said. He got the name of Ellie's next of kin from the file. We need to talk to her mother. The meeting took place before lunch. Mrs. Smith, I'm Hillary Bridges, Hillary said to the woman sitting on the small patio outside her apartment at the village. Hello, Hillary, are you my nurse? The older woman asked. No, ma'am, we are police officers, Roger said. Oh my, is my son in trouble again? She asked. We don't think so, Hillary said. He hasn't shot out more streetlights, has he? The older woman asked. No, ma'am, we are here about your daughter, Ellie, Roger suggested. Ellie comes to visit me every day, she said. Of course, they couldn't put much faith in what she said. The head of patient welfare had warned Hillary that Mrs. Smith drifted in and out of dementia. She sure seemed to do that, Roger thought. The same lady had informed Hillary that the daughter was the contact for her care decisions. Mrs. Smith, where is your son Edward these days? Roger asked. Did Eddie cut school again? I promise I will talk to him when he comes home, Mrs. Smith informed them. Once they were back in the car, Hillary began. So are you thinking the son? I'm thinking it is a possibility, Roger said. As long as he doesn't get caught, there is no downside to the indecent. His sister is taking care of his mother, so if she quits, she can get a normal, safe job. If she doesn't, she gets a career boost. I don't think that is the case. It just seems awfully dicey, Hillary said. Too many things left to chance. It isn't murder, so if the plan fails, nothing is lost. He didn't shoot anywhere near his sister, Roger said. If it was the brother. Let's take a look at the boyfriend, then we can come back to the brother, Eddie, if the boyfriend doesn't look good for it. Hillary said. Let's find the boyfriend and rattle his cage, Roger said. It took almost 2 hours to run him down. In the end, it was Hillary who tracked him down through a neighbor of Ellie's. He turned out to be a realtor. If Roger had met him without knowing anything about him, he would have thought the Herald was a hairdresser. He seemed awfully effeminate. They found him setting up shop for an evening open house event. After the introductions, Roger began the questioning. So, Harold, how do you feel about Ellie being a cop? Roger asked. I mean, it must be a constant concern that something will happen to her. Of course I think about that, but it's what she wants and I want her to be happy, Harold said. Would you like for her to change jobs? Just give up police work and go into something less dangerous? Hillary asked. I think anyone would like to see his fiancée safe, Harold said. She is getting good reviews, so she will probably be here as long as she wants to be, Roger said. Harold, do you own a rifle? Yes, my grandfather was in Korea. He bought a .30 caliber carbine back with him. I have it at home, Harold said. He was getting a little worried, Roger could tell. Would you mind if I took a look at that weapon? He asked. Do I need a lawyer? Harold asked. I don't know, do you? How is it going to look to Ellie if you lawyer up? Hillary asked. I want a lawyer, Harold said. I'm going to turn this interview tape over to the detectives, Roger said. I expect they will be at your house this afternoon with a warrant for the carbine, Hillary said. If they go through that trouble, they won't be in a forgiving mood. Those guys are only in the numbers. They don't see the people behind the numbers. So you can leave now, Harold. After he had gone, Hillary said, I'm going to get Stakeout to be sure he doesn't destroy evidence before we can get a warrant. Do you need me to go along to the magistrate? Roger asked. No, why are you so hot to get off early? Do you have a date? She paused a moment to look at Roger. My God, you do have a date. Not really, there is a contractor doing some work at the burnout. I need to go meet with him. Roger lied. He met Rose in the park across from the headquarters building. She brought the Walmart bag with his clothes from the previous day. So do I kiss you? Or pretend we didn't have sex last night? He asked. We didn't have sex last night, she said emphatically. Okay. If you feel like you need to deny it, I will play along, he said. You might not want to talk like that with most people. They might have you locked away in a padded room, Rose said seriously. Well, no cerebral sex for you. I can tell that. So did you finish at the house? Roger asked. Almost. I think you are going to like what you see, Rose said. I'm sure I will. Of course, I'm going to have to assume that you are going to be monitoring my every movement and word, Roger said. Is that more of the drug-induced paranoia? She asked. I don't need the drugs for that. You do remember the smell of burn dog in the air yesterday? He asked. Not really. With smoke, yes. But burn dog, no, she said. I guess if you didn't know the smell included Wendy, then you wouldn't know, he said, knowing that she was way too literal thinking to understand. Hillary would have understood, or at least known he was playing at being an amateur philosopher. They drove in silence until they reached his drive. The large SUV belonging to the professor sat in his drive. Let me out here and wait for me, he said. He walked to where the deck had once been. It seemed to be Recovery Central. Both professors were loading those large black plastic bags with crockery. Professor, I am so sorry that I had no idea this would happen. Roger said, I hope it wasn't about me. It might have just been an act of senseless destruction, Roger said. Or it could have been someone with a grudge against you, his wife said. Or someone you gave a bad grade to, Roger said. To whom? She answered. Okay, someone to whom you gave a bad grade, Roger said. I don't think so, her husband said. There was a voicemail at work for me yesterday. It came in after the story broke. He left it in my voicemail at the university. I gave it to the deputy working the case. The man said he was sorry and that he thought it was where you lived. I see. Well, I'm sorry you got caught up in my drama. If there is anything I can do, please call on me, Roger said. The professors ignored his outstretched hand. Roger got back into the car. You will be lucky if they don't get a lawyer and sue. I am indemnified against any lawsuit arising from my actions as an undercover cop. First, by the fact that I was acting as an agent of the federal government, and secondly, by the newspaper coverage. The professors can claim they didn't know about the risk, but they were living in town when the story broke. It ran off and on for almost a year. The newspaper even had pictures of me in uniform. So if they didn't know who they were renting from, they were idiots. As far as the court is concerned, they knew at least as much as I did. The only thing I didn't do is have them sign a waiver. Roger, you really should go into witness protections, Rose said. Another of Satan's advocates heard from, Roger said. Let's go around the professor's car and take a look at what you have done. The first level of protection was a lighted sign. It read, warning, you are being recorded. There were 2 cameras mounted on the signpost, which rose 10 feet above the ground. Those won't last long, Roger commented. Rose pointed to the pine thicket about 10 yards down the drive. I don't see anything, Roger said. That's the idea. We have the real camera there. The other 2 are girlfriend cameras. The hardcore killer cams are less visible. They are motion and sound activated. We have a camera on each side of the cabin as well, then one inside. You can access any of them with your cell phone. I have to admit that is a cool plan. So what is the plan for when I am asleep inside? That's when they will most likely come, Roger said. Motion detectors in the pine thicket, along with barbed wire strung 6 inches off the ground. That's a little old school, but it gets their minds off the real mess. A couple of sound mines with a half dozen 50-pound release triggers. A bear or deer might set them off once, but not likely. All this is solar powered, Rose explained. There is one thing we still have to erect. We were forced to go with a custom gate. They couldn't have it ready until next week. I will be back with a crew to install it. To open and close it, you will have to go to the internet. The good news is that it can be activated with a passcode online. That is also the bad news, so don't give it to anyone. So how about my floodlights? Roger asked. For mounted on the cabin, and they are also solar battery powered. Anyone cutting the power would have to get to the cabin and they would be on your camera files, she said. Well, Miss Rose, you obviously know what you are doing, Roger said. Yes, I do. So here is the number to call for service and your temporary password, she said. You have to be kidding me. My password is dumb6586? Roger asked. Dumb for your cop status and 6586 for your height and weight. You will need to change it, Rose replied. Damn, Roger replied. The password has to be at least 5 letters and 4 numbers, she informed him. Right. So are you coming in? Roger asked. Why? Our business is complete, she said, then added just to be absolutely sure he would never call her again. Nobody likes a snitch. Nice. I figured you were a snake, Roger said with a laugh as he exited the car. Roger went into the tiny house he had built inside the shell of his storage shed. Inside the house, he fixed himself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. He also poured himself a glass of all-chemical iced tea made from a dry mix purchased at Walmart. He bought most of his groceries there. He rode the scooter up to the store at least 3 times a week, then filled the milk carton tied onto the rear with groceries. Well, what passed for groceries for him. That night, he watched old TV shows on the computer as he also checked the perimeter. It was kind of a fun thing. Of course, after a couple of hours, the novelty wore off. He didn't want to use his Wi-Fi connection to check anything, since he felt sure Rose the Snake had piggybacked a signal to monitor his browsing. He could wait till the next day at work to do his research. He slept better knowing the house was fairly secure, but he also knew he needed a shotgun. The pistol and even a rifle would be of no use at night. At least they would be no use to him. Roger wasn't an expert marksman with either. He added the purchase of a 12-gauge trench gun to his list for the next day. Roger awoke the next morning at 6:30 a.m. He had a hard time believing that he missed the exercise program from the rehab facility. He felt lethargic and fat, even thought everyone else thought of him as too thin. Probably because almost everyone was 10 to 20 pounds overweight, and those were the ones who described themselves as fit. Roger hated to run. Even though he knew it was the best form of exercise, he couldn't even imagine running 5 to 10 miles every morning. There was no room in his tiny house for gym equipment, and thanked God for that. He knew he had to figure something out, even if it was joining a gym. Not one of those fancy things, but maybe an old-style boxing gym. He thought, and then he decided it would never happen. He was too much of a loner. Roger finally got out of bed. He showered, then dressed in his jeans and bush jacket. Before leaving for work, he checked the weather on his computer. He did that every morning. He did it even though he parked his scooter in an enclosed parking deck. He also stored one rain suit at the office and one at home. He didn't care for the idea of being wet all day. He realized that the lieutenant hadn't had his driver's license returned as of yet. It had only been 2 weeks, so maybe he shouldn't worry so soon. Once he made his way into the office, he found Hillary all excited. "What is happening, Hills? Did you get laid?" he asked. "I wish that when the detectives went to the boyfriend's house with a search warrant, they found the .30 caliber carbine. Since he didn't know the slug we have was broken all to hell, the detectives let him believe that it was only a matter of time till they matched it with the rifle." The little freak went belly up, Hillary said. "So was it what we thought?" Roger asked. It was indeed. Officer Smith knew nothing of it. The boyfriend hoped that it would scare her into running home to him with her tail between her legs. "You know he must have a 10-inch prick?" Hillary said thoughtfully. "Now that is a sexist thing to say," Roger replied. "You going to report me, Mr. Snitch?" she asked. Roger smiled. "The detective bureau will get the collar, but we should be sure our report reflects the work we have done." "Of course, comrade," Roger said. "You know all that vanity doesn't help. Good work is its own reward." "I know that you sound like an idiot when you try to wax philosophical," Hillary advised him. The phone rang just then. "It's for you." Roger answered the call. "Michael Peters here," the voice said. "Yes, Mr. Peters?" Roger asked. "I'm a senior patrolman and training officer with D Squad," the voice said. "Okay, what can I do for you?" Roger asked. "I am also a contractor who uses off-duty cops to do work. Some of these young guys need the extra money. I also have a 2-ton dump truck," Peters said. "Is this about the fire damage?" Roger asked. "It is. The county will be serving you a notice soon explaining that you need to clear the lot of the damage. It's a breeding ground for rats. I can put a crew on the ground out there and get it done in a couple of days," Peters said. "Peters, do you know who I am?" Roger asked. "I know you are going to have an insurance check, and money doesn't have a home," Peters admitted. "I can write you a fair estimate. You can turn it into the insurance company. After they approve it, we can do the work and get paid." "No sweat off your balls," Peters replied. "I'll have to think it over." "Give me your number," Roger demanded. The one thing the call had done was to remind Roger that he hadn't reported the fire to his insurance company. With that in mind, he dialed his mortgage company to get the insurance company's name. It turned out they were carrying the insurance for him as part of his mortgage payment. So he was transferred to the lady in charge. He explained it all to her. "Get the contractor to give you an estimate for cleaning the lot, and we can go from there," she said. "Good plan," Roger agreed. After thinking it over all morning, Roger decided to go with Peter's estimate. "Good, that was quick," Peters said. "Like you said, long as it is done right. I don't care who does it, the weekend is coming. So can you get the estimate to the First Bank of Belmont's insurance department on Monday?" Roger asked. "You got it, Mr. Everhart," Peters said. Roger worked up until 5 p.m. on Friday, reading complaints and writing follow-up reports. Most of them were simple complaint unfounded type reports. Sometimes when he felt there might be some misconduct, but it was so minor as to be insignificant, he would make a lack of hard evidence report and move on. Roger had to be careful because all his reports, regardless of the findings, moved up the chain. As Roger left the office Friday night, Hillary suggested they go to dinner. Not at a greasy spoon, but dinner at a really nice restaurant. When he agreed, Roger tried not to think of it as a date. After all, she was the boss, he told himself. Also, there was that 10 to 15 years age difference. Hillary suggested that she pick him up at home. He needed to change and still didn't have a car or driver's license. Neither of them wanted him driving the scooter at night. That's how she came to be on his security camera footage at 7 p.m. on a Friday night. "Where are we going?" he asked as he climbed into her car. "I thought we might try that new steak house out by the South Mall," she suggested. "All men like steak, don't they?" "Of course," he replied. He did enjoy beef now and then, but he really didn't care for big chunks of steak. Nonetheless, he was happy to go along with her. Since he didn't have an alternative plan, Hillary's would have to do, no matter what it was. He waited to allow Hillary to order before he did. He didn't want to discourage her from her steak and potato. Dinner for him consisted of a giant bowl of lettuce with bacon, hard-boiled eggs, tomato, and onions with fruit piled one top. I feel bad eating all this food while you graze on lawn trimmings, she suggested. You shouldn't, since I ordered what I wanted. You should only feel guilty if you deprived me of what I really wanted, Roger explained. After dinner, while walking to her car, Hillary asked, "So what do people do on dates these days, when the date isn't really a date?" "I have no idea. I used to go back to the apartment and get high," Roger said. "That isn't an option, is it?" she asked. "No, it isn't. I can't see you getting high," Roger said. "Nor can I see you." "That is a compliment, by the way," Hillary said. "Good. So what are we celebrating?" "Our first complete week without a murder," Roger asked. "Sure, why not? I think I have shown remarkable self-control. I might have felt like strangling you, but I did resist," Hillary said. "In that case, we should go dancing," Roger suggested. "I think not. I don't dance," she said. "So what do you do on dates that are not dates?" Roger asked. "You don't want to do that either," she said. "Oh well, if it involves the sacrifice of small animals." "No, I don't," he said. "You are implying I'm a witch," she said with a serious laugh. "I like that." "If the broom fits," he said. "Usually we go home and have sex," she replied simply while looking away. "If we did that, I assure you, it would be nothing personal. Then on a strictly logical note, it would be a stupid thing for us to do. We work together, and as of right now, I would jump in front of you to save you. If you turn out to be terrible in bed, I might sacrifice you," Roger admitted. "Don't worry, I would sacrifice you either way," she said without a smile. Roger felt like it was the truth. "So, if we are going to do this, do I need to stock up on condoms?" Roger asked. "Always the Boy Scout," Hillary said. "I use a very secure birth control method." When they arrived back at his tiny house, Hillary hadn't changed her mind, so she entered the house. "Let me see if I can shut down the camera," Roger suggested. Since he had a couple of days to fool around, he found the camera controls and killed the camera inside the house. "I might have preferred the camera to continue. I could always use a sex tape later, just in case one of us should become famous," Hillary said. "The problem is that I'm not sure who is watching them," he whispered in her ear. "Should I be careful what I say?" she asked in a whisper as well. He nodded his head. "Do you still want to do this?" "Now more than ever," she said, accompanied by what could have passed as a giggle. The two of them made a very odd couple. He was skinny as a rail and Hillary was soft all over. She wasn't chubby, she just had a round body with no sharp angles. She started to undress, while Roger went about closing the rolled-down shades over his two windows. He also pulled the drapes over the slightly narrower than normal sliding door. He was more than a little surprised that they both were able to fit on the daybed. He was forced against the wall, but it wasn't all that uncomfortable. After it was over, he said, "I have to admit, that was absolutely adequate." "I felt the same. I think you need more practice," Hillary told him as she pulled him back down for another kiss. "I'll make note of it," Roger said. "So what was your plan for the day?" Hillary asked the next morning. "The plan is to start on a walking track along the perimeter of the lot," Roger admitted. "Why don't you walk on the country road like everyone else?" she suggested. "Then I should wear a giant name tag on my back, just in case the firebomber is still upset." "I couldn't face the anger of another neighbor," Roger said. "Good point," she said. "Well, I have some exciting things to do myself." "Want to take me to breakfast?" she asked. "I only require a fast food breakfast. It won't delay you more than a half hour." "Sure, the track isn't going anywhere," Roger said. After the not-so-romantic breakfast, Hillary dropped him at his tiny house. Roger immediately put on his boots. He didn't really need boots other than for a small creek which ran behind his tiny house. He was concerned that he might have a close encounter with a snake. Roger hated and feared snakes of all kinds. Since Roger contracted with a landscape company to cut his grass all the way back to the stand of pines, he needed only to clear a path through them. His neighbor on the right was a dairy farmer, so there was barbed wire marking their shared property line. On the other side of his property, there was a wooden rail fence. It wouldn't keep anything in or out, but it to mark the property line. Roger carried a machete for use in clearing the brush beneath the pine trees. Since it was a walking path, he didn't feel the need to cut down any trees. He didn't even clear the fallen trees. He simply moved then a few feet to clean the path he was making. Stepping over a fallen tree is not a good idea. There is no way to know what's on the other side, not to mention the trip hazard. It is more than 100 yards from here back to the house. "I can't imagine crawling that far with a broken ankle," he muttered to no one at all. Roger had expected to clear the stand of pines in a few hours, but it was well after lunch when he decided to take a break. He had managed to clear the path as far as the creek and along the bank until it left his property. He decided to leave the rest of the space until the next day. He was tired and filthy. He needed a shower and some food. Roger was making it a habit to check the cameras at his home before driving there. He also checked them randomly whenever he had a few minutes to spare, which he did while finishing his large iced tea in the McDonald's dining room. Since they had free Wi-Fi, it was easy to make a quick check before driving to the Walmart store. The Walmart superstore was located in the same parking lot as the restaurant. In the Walmart store, he found what he wanted in the sporting good department. He bought a short-barreled, though entirely legal, 12-gauge shotgun. He also bought a box of shells. The gun would need to be assembled by him since Walmart obviously thought selling a working shotgun and shells to the same customer was a recipe for disaster. It struggled to get the shotgun home. He went slowly and juggled it until he got it into the tiny house. Roger spent an hour assembling, then oiling and loading the gun. Most of that hour was spent trying to decide where the shotgun would be secure yet easy to reach. The floor-to-ceiling kitchen cabinet was meant to serve as a pantry and broom closet. It also seemed to be the best available spot to store a shotgun. Roger watched TV on his computer for the next couple of hours. He was tempted to call Hillary, but resisted the urge. He was pretty sure she would make the next move if he allowed her time to do so. After watching a movie, he just drifted off to sleep. On Sunday morning, Roger began work on his track again. He found the work easier since there were fewer vines once he left the creek area. He had to use the machete a few times, but mostly he was able to just pull the vines from the trees to clear a path. The one thing that did surprise Roger was the paper littering the pine thicket. Evidently, trash had blown into the thicket and become trapped there. Roger had 2 large plastic bags filled with paper napkins and the like. At 3 p.m., Roger was ready to declare the path open for business. His fancy phone recorded and updated his movement on path. With that phone, he was able to determine the length of the trail. He did all the math in his head and determined that it was 1/3 of a mile in length. He was tired from all the work, so he just had dinner, watched some delayed broadcast TV, then went to bed. He actually had a dream about Hillary, but was unable to remember the details. When Roger met Hillary after his 6 laps around the track, he was actually embarrassed. He wasn't sure whether it was the dream or the sex. The dream, even though he couldn't remember the details, was much more erotic than the sex with Hillary had been. Sex with Hillary was almost an extension of his work in the office. That wasn't a bad thing, just not as pleasurable as one would expect. "Are you quite all right?" Hillary asked as she noticed Roger staring off into space. "Yes, I am fine," Roger said. "Then answer the questions. Do you know a woman named Rose from Acme Security?" Hillary asked. "Yes, of course, she had all the cameras installed," Roger explained. "Why are you asking?" "She called and left a message. She says the gate will arrive on Wednesday," Hillary informed him. "Good," Roger said, turning away. He really didn't want to discuss it with her. Roger forced Hillary from his mind, then turned to the cold complaint files. An hour later, he stumbled on a complaint about an officer parking his patrol car in front of the downtown branch of an insurance company. The car was parked there every Wednesday night for an hour. There were no other details. "Hello," Roger said into his official cell phone. "Mike Peters. I just called to let you know I gave our estimate to the bank's insurance department. They were okay with it, so we will do the job Wednesday when we have the day off." "It is just a one-day job," Mike said. "Fair enough, let me know if you need anything," Roger said. "Okay," Mike said and then hung up. He obviously wasn't thrilled to be working for Roger. He still had the patrol car parked outside of the insurance agent's office at night on his mind. He should bring in all the officers of the squad on duty at the times of the complaints. He had a feeling that since it was a morals issue that would never happen, he could get a general warning about girlfriends and sex on the job issued, but he wanted to target it a little closer. He also wanted it to come from the desk cops if they felt the brass badge group felt it had to come out at all. Since he was on everyone's shit list, he decided that the information needed to come through Hillary at the very least. "Hills, I got these old complaints from that box of cold files you wanted me to read. Take a look at this one, please," Roger asked. "Okay," she said. "I thought you might want to see this. It's a report from the state police lab. It was forwarded by Deputy Sykes with a copy to the volunteer fire department," she said. While she read the file on the mysterious patrol car, Roger read the file from the forensic lab. They identified the fire starter used in the fire at his house. It was no shock to Roger that it had been a glass bottle filled with gasoline. Where anyone found a glass bottle by that time was hard to fathom. The burn pattern was consistent with a shattered container. They also found a piece of colored glass on the floor under the window. Probably because the suspect glass was green, the lab concluded that they were not consistent with the window pane. It also had no prints. They also determined that the liquid in the bottle was a mixture of gasoline and oil. "Weed whacker. Everyone in the area owns one," Roger thought. He just filed it away in his mind's file cabinet. Some cop is screwing an insurance agent at work, Hillary said. Nothing criminal there. It is a breach of department policy, but do we really want to open that can of worms? Hillary, did you learn nothing from the last 2 years of my life? If you want to get a cop, you start out slowly. Then you start increasing the pressure on him. It might be nothing now, but it makes him vulnerable. We don't have to do more than identify him, check him out for other things, then call him in for an interview. Get it on record that it happened, but we couldn't prove it. Then we either scare him straight, or we know who to look at later down the line, Roger suggested. You know, for a guy with a week on this job, you understand it. I mean, you really understand it, Hillary said. Hills, they have had a chance to regroup. It's like a cancer. You have to get it all and keep testing for it, Roger said. Sometimes cancer kills the patient, she said. That sounds a little like a threat, Roger said. Not at all. I think you have had plenty of those over the years. So there is nothing to take to the bosses right now. Put some names to this, then we can kick it upstairs. Roger turned away, then turned back. You got any thoughts on the firebomb? 2-cycle engine fuel, and what the hell comes in a glass bottle these days? She asked. Yeah, that's what I thought too, Roger agreed. I wonder why the cop car complaints ended. Damn, do you always change subjects without any warning? Hillary asked. I guess so, he said. They lost interest, or one of them got caught. Wives are a lot smarter than cops, so I'm told, she suggested. So there wouldn't be a trail, since he wouldn't have stopped seeing the woman if his wife threw him out. If he did stop seeing her, maybe his wife caught him and he gave up his piece on the side to save his pension. Hillary looked at him curiously. The wife would get half of it, even if he wasn't eligible at the time. If she had a good lawyer anyway. Then again, maybe it was the husband that caught his girlfriend, Hillary said. Either way, the complaints placed the car there at or around dinner time. He was there at least twice a week for a couple of months. You know, it could be still going on. Maybe he just wised up and changed where he parks the car, Roger suggested. I can get the GPS data for all the cars. They installed those things in their last year. I bet you that it was the same time the complaints stopped, Hillary said. If that was the case, the cop changed his pattern, but didn't necessarily clean up his act. So let's go at it from the other end. Who is the woman? Roger asked. She is someone with a key to the building, Hillary said. All the staff most likely have keys. They probably have nothing in there of any value, Roger suggested. We are overlooking another possibility. The cop got rolled up in your investigation and is doing time, Hillary suggested. The timing is right. So do you want to drop it? Roger asked curiously. Not till we know. There may be no satisfactory ending here for several reasons. Put it on the back burner and work it when nothing else is pushing us. That is the same with the firebomb, Hillary said. So how do we get a list of the employees of the insurance company? Roger asked. They all have to have licenses. It might take a while, but we can get them, Hillary said. Or we could walk in and flash the badge and ask real nice, Roger said. I knew it. That's what you wanted all along. All right, let's go talk to the officer manager, Hillary agreed. I do enjoy being played, as long as it's on the job. You do understand? Yeah, I got it, Roger said. Detective Bridges, and this is Detective Everhart, Hillary said, giving the receptionist a card. We are with the Internal Affairs section of the police department, and we need to see the manager. You really should have called first, the receptionist said. What's your name, miss? Hillary asked. Sarah Jones, the 20-something girl said. Roger noted that she was very attractive. He wrote her name in his notebook. That was one name down, he thought. Miss Jones, I think your boss might like to speak with us. It will short-circuit an inquiry, which we will otherwise have to take up with the insurance commissioner's office, Hillary said. Wait right here, she said. After she had left the room, Hillary turned to Roger and spoke softly. Notice all the empty desks. They seem to be paring down the workforce. It's a recession, hadn't you heard? Roger said quietly. It was a sarcastic answer, and Hillary recognized it as such. The office manager came out with the receptionist following. Hello, Herman Hartley. I'm the office manager. Also, I'm the senior agent. Hillary went through the introductions a second time. I would like to have a list of all your agents employed over the last 6 months, even those who are no longer employed by Great Northern Insurance Company. To be honest, Sarah and I are the only employees here. We have a phone bank. Most of Great Northern Insurance is sold by phone or on the internet. I'm the agent of record for all of it. Believe me, it's all legal, Hartley said. Then give me the names of your phone operators for the last 6 months. Also explain to Sarah that when I call back to ask for more information, it would be a very good idea for her to cooperate, Hillary said. I will cooperate completely, Sarah said. Hillary looked at Roger as if to say, don't trust anything this woman says. Email those names to me, Hillary said. My email is on the card you were planning to toss in the trash. When they were outside, she said, something is wrong in there. Do you reckon? Roger agreed. When we get the files, we are going to start cross-matching them with the personnel on D platoon, Hillary said. I don't think the name of our mystery man or woman will be in the name she sends us, Roger said. My guess is they are busy destroying files as we speak. Sometime you just have to give them enough rope, Hillary said. I have heard that bullshit before, Roger said. You are so pessimistic, Hillary said. Shall we go find out where the insurance company does business? We should probably get the bank records for either Great Northern or Mr. Herman Hartley or both, Hillary said. Oh, I like that, Roger said. Maybe as a byproduct of our search for the love-sick cop, we can clean Mr. Hartley's clock, Roger suggested. You do know how to turn a phrase, Roger dear, Hillary said. Before we do anything else, I have to call in a favor. Hillary made the call, but Roger was told to leave the office while she did it. All the next day, Roger and Hillary chased around looking for bank accounts in either Great Northern Insurance or Herman Hartley's names. At the end of Tuesday, they had nothing. As far as the State Banking Commission was concerned, the Great Northern Insurance Company had no complaints and were licensed as an insurance broker. It took a while for Roger to wrap his head around the difference between an insurance broker, an insurance agent, and an insurance provider. When you think insurance company, it can be a provider, or a broker, or an agent who works for one or the other. If two clients bought insurance from Herman Hartley, he would assign the policy to Great Northern Insurance Company, which was a brokerage company. The two people might have different insurance providers depending the information on their application. Great Northern would handle his payments and claims, but the money would be provided by the provider company. It was a screwy arrangement designed to avoid liability. The broker had no liability, but the provider company had no official standing in the state. Neither was regulated by the insurance commissioner. As Hartley had said, there was no law against it. It was a scam, but a legal one. It was 4:45 p.m. when a black man in work clothes and a hard hat stopped by the office. Roger was alone in the office, so of course he asked, "Can I help you?" "No, I don't think so." He moved to Hillary's computer. "Hold on there. I can't let you mess with Miss Bridges' computer," Roger said. "You better back off, white boy," the man said. "Who you calling white boy?" Roger asked. He was trying to decide whether to laugh or toss him against the wall. "Hillary, come in here and straighten your white boy out," the back man shouted toward the break room. "Roger, leave Jerome alone," Hillary said. "He is doing me a favor." Roger put up his hands and backed away. After some pings and beeps, the job, whatever it was, seemed complete. "Tonight at 8 p.m., Jerome said as he walked out the door. After he was gone, Roger asked, "What was that all about?" "Jerome works for the cable company. If you or me were to climb the pole across the street from Herman's office, there would be hell to pay. Now who would expect this from a cable company?" She asked. "Bring up a video feed showing the front door to Herman Hartley's office. Now we know if anyone, who isn't on our list, comes by for his or her final check," Hillary added. "Beautiful. Remind me to never, ever doubt you," Roger suggested. Roger also went back and pulled the video from the day before after the camera was first installed. "I got the pictures. You get to stay and transfer them to a file for the computer lab. Have them run them against the DMV picture file and mugshots file," Hillary said. "And what are you going to do while I do that?" Roger asked. "Pay for them, of course," she said. They were right in the middle of the grunt work on the Herman Hartley investigation, so it was a good time to take a day off. Roger had more than enough compensatory time. His plan was watch the off-duty cops clean up his house fire site. Since he didn't give a crap what they thought, he wanted to inspect the job site before they left. He also planned to be tough on them. Roger also expected to have Rose's fence crew showing up. After her last remarks to him, he had no love for her or her crew. They were going to get a hard look as well. He was a little paranoid, but as he told Hillary on his first day with Internal Affairs, being paranoid don't mean they weren't after him. Since she was another cop, it was easy for her to believe. It had been proven that his security concerns were justified. He had walked the cleared area along the perimeter of his property for the last couple of days, so it was no big deal for him to do so that Wednesday morning as well. As much as he hated it, he ran the first 2 laps, then walked 4 more. He figured 2 miles on the first day was a good start. It was hard to continue past 2 miles without an instructor threatening him. Roger laughed at the thought of hiring a teenager with a knife to chase him around the track. After that 2-mile walk, Roger showered, then dressed for the day. He wore his cut-off jeans since the weather is still mild. The cops arrived about 9. He watched them pull up on his camera aimed toward the street. 2 of the men came in the dump truck for trash and 2 more in a pickup truck. Roger waited until they got past the walking around looking phase. Once the men started picking up the trash and tossing it into the dump truck, Roger walked to the front of the lot. Most of the men he recognized, even if he couldn't put a name to the faces. He spoke to the man who was operating as the foreman. "Good morning, how is it going?" Roger asked. "We just got started, but it doesn't look as if there are going to be any problems. We have a couple of more guy and some other equipment coming in a few minutes. Once we get the trash, we will start on the standing structure." "Good. It sounds like you know what you are doing," Roger said. "I did tell the boss that I wanted to leave the standing walls if they are not in danger of collapsing. I know the roof structure has to come down, so do what you have to. I'll be around if you have any questions." "Good," the man suggested. Roger saw him join the others clearing the trash. Roger walked back to the house to get his notebook. His plan was to ride the scooter to McDonald's for coffee and a quick check of his super-secret email. Roger really didn't have any secrets. The account was for people who didn't want to be monitored. The small notebook had no hard drive at all. The BIOS was hardwired to the machine. The machine booted and ran from a flash drive. It either stored information in an online hard drive substitute or on a second flash drive. It also ran a heavy-duty encryption program when the notebook shut down for any reason. The power for the notebook was provided by 3 alkaline AA batteries. Roger kept an eye on the work while he researched the Great Northern Insurance Company. He went all over the net chasing information, but found nothing useful to his investigation. After 2 cups of coffee, Roger left the dining room. He resisted the urge to buy donuts on his way out of the parking lot, going directly home instead. He waited until noon before the fence crew arrived. The gate proved to be a lot more complicated than he expected. The gate ran on large motorized wheels. Because of that, it didn't need tracks. The camera had been mounted close enough to the gate post so that no changes were necessary. The sign on the fence gave instructions for using the intercom on the gate post. The activation of the intercom actually rang his cell phone. It was well after 6 when the cop crew finished the cleanup. The second crew had brought a bobcat with them so that they could safely collapse the roof. The gate installation had taken only a couple of hours. They were all gone well before dark. There was no plan for any of them to return. "Hello," Roger said into the cop's cell phone. "It's Hillary. I have spotted a woman who is not on the list. She appears to be a college student." The names of those provided to us were mostly unemployed men and women who were hired as contract employees. Why her name was not included is a mystery, one that is going to require some further investigation. "I think I will wait for you. So are you going to be back tomorrow?" she asked in a rush. "Yes, everything is done. Are you still at the office?" Roger asked. "Yes, but I'm headed out the door," Hillary said. "Okay, I guess I'll see you tomorrow," Roger suggested. "Well, I might pick up a pizza and come see you unless you have something else on for tonight," Hillary suggested. "I have no plans, but let's do it at your place," Roger suggested. "Oh, I was sorta hoping for another movie," Hillary said. "Then use your fancy telephone," Roger suggested. "All right, I need to get out of the house," Hillary admitted. "In that case, meet me at the pizza pit, and then after dinner we can come back to my place," Roger suggested. "That will work." "Are you going to ask why I need to get away from my place?" Hillary asked. "Not unless you have an assassin after you," Roger said. "Nothing like that," Hillary said. "Then I don't need to know," Roger suggested. He spent a couple of hours at home watching a TV show from the night before. Roger mostly watched reality shows, even though he knew most of them were anything but reality. There were more situational docudrama. Most were interesting enough. If you could forget that the man alone in the wild had a cameraman with a GPS device standing beside him, he was hardly a man lost and starving in the wild. After his fake reality show set in the Northwoods, he checked and again and found all the workers still gone. Pizza at the pit was good. It always was. Hillary was all about work, which was the same as well. Over a glass of wine and a slice of pizza, she filled him in on the facts of the Herman Hartley investigation, at least the facts as she knew them to be at the time. "I hate to turn this one over to the department," she informed him, "but we have no choice. We can't tie the insurance scam to cops. The cop car parked there proves nothing. The cop could have been off duty and stopping for coffee with his girlfriend. We have the camera set up, and if he is still going there, we will identify him." "So another investigation ended too early," Roger said. "It's almost like you don't want us to do our job, but I know you are passionate about the game. My guess is someone is stopping you." "You really shouldn't be doing that," Hillary said. "Doing what?" Roger asked. "Guessing. Surely I have taught you better," she said. Roger noted that she didn't deny any of it. "So there are only 2 official bosses above you on the food chain, the deputy chief and the chief. So which one is it? Either way, the deputy chief is in the loop. He either told you on his own, or he passed on an order he knew to be illegal, Roger said. We have done nothing illegal. We just don't want to give the department any more bad press, Hillary said. It doesn't matter why. You are covering up cop misbehavior, Roger informed her. So are you going to the DOJ? She asked. No, but I am going to roll over on you guys. I snitched on cops before, so it will be just another day at the office. I didn't risk my life and lose all my friends to have some paper-pushing politician continue a 100-year-old tradition of looking the other way, Roger said. They will kill you. If I tell them you said that, Hillary said. No, they won't, Hills. They will order you to do it. Just like they ordered you to firebomb my house. You knew where I would be and you knew where I lived. You tossed the gasoline-filled wine bottle through the window and drove straight back to the office. Tomorrow, when I run the GPS trace on your car for that day, I will have your butt, Roger said, standing to walk toward the cash register. I knew no one was home at the house. I didn't know about the dog, Hillary said to his back. You need to do what you do best. Cover your butt, Roger said without turning back. He had, of course, recorded her on his smartphone, so it wouldn't be his word against hers. Too bad she hadn't fingered the chief. Even so, after even more bad press, he likely would be forced out. It looked as though the DOJ would get what they wanted after all. The ouster of a questionable chief of police, Hillary would get at least a slap on the wrist and be on the street. They also would get him out of law enforcement permanently. For Roger, the burning question was what next? Roger had given it a lot of thought. All he had was Hillary's vague confession to him. There was no real evidence against her. It was just the timeline. I was the wake-up call he needed to convince him it would take years to be safe, if he ever managed it at all. Having the cops that pissed off at you wasn't like having your neighbor pissed. Cops could do all kinds of things to a guy. They weren't likely to kill him, but they would likely have no problem killing his dog. He didn't have a dog, but he might one day. For the moment, they would have to settle for trashing his car and his life. So the DOJ's offer looked better all the time. The best he could do was tell DOJ about the Hillary Bridges and hope they could investigate. They might be able to turn her to get whoever had convinced her to burn his house. Hello, ID 737 PDS, he said to the voice who had answered the phone simply hello. The digital transfer took only milliseconds. What can we do for you, Roger? The female voice asked. I saw your advertisement in the Times. I would like to see the house, Roger said. We can arrange that. Is there a time that would work best for you? The voice asked. Any time at all is fine. Probably the sooner the better, Roger said. You will be hearing from us later today, the voice suggested. Roger remembered only parts of the briefing since he never planned to run. He knew he should leave everything in place. He would be picked up by an airport limousine. Everything up to that point should appear natural. He didn't even bother to call in sick. He just didn't show up for work. He trashed his cell phone immediately after the call. He packed a small backpack with some clothing and some cash. Cash was always good when one was going on the run. He also packed about 10 marked daggers. Since Roger made his own, they were totally untraceable. He had made them from 8-inch pieces of a bright orange driveway marker stake. They came from Home Depot, so they were easy and cheap. He had simply cut them, feed them though a piece of automobile vacuum line for a handle. He sharpened the tip with a pencil sharpener. During his time as a junkie, he had become a master of the shank. If worse came to worse, there was always the big ballpoint pen. Roger dressed in clean clothes after his shower. Since he had no idea when he would have the chance to shower again, he was very thorough. He emptied his pockets of his keys and any identification. He didn't have much besides his driver's license and his police ID. Roger was going to be in the wind. He could have faked his own death, but he didn't bother. DOJ would surely swoop down to investigate. Everyone knew he had a connection with them. He was ready to leave at 9 a.m., so he sat listening for his burner phone to ring. The limo is on the way. The debrief will be in D.C. A different mysterious voice delivered the message. Before he could acknowledge the message, the phone went dead. When the limo pulled down the drive, it wasn't a limo at all. It was a minivan with the legend airport limo on the side. He knew it was kosher because no one else could have thrown it together so quickly. Roger was in the cab with his backpack very quickly. The limo was in his drive no more than 5 minutes. Once they cleared his property, he said, "It's a little chilly today." He pulled on a very lightweight nylon parka purchased in the thrift store. The big appeal for Roger was the hood. The limo dropped him at the terminal. Roger wore his large mirrored sunglasses and raised the hood. Sure, he would look suspicious, but that wasn't proof of anything. He walked to the ticket counter and picked up his ticket purchased at the last minute. He found a blind spot in the CCTV system and waited. There was always a blind spot, so it didn't take any spycraft to find it. When they called his flight, Roger went to the boarding gate. They confiscated his daggers, but it wasn't a big deal. He would just find a drugstore and buy a pack of Bic pins. Once he was on the plane, he removed the glasses and parka. He carefully placed both into his small backpack before storing it beneath his seat. Since there was 10 grand cash inside it, he wanted to keep it close. After a couple of more hours waiting for the plane to make a half-hour flight, he was out the door of the much larger terminal. He had no idea when or where they would kidnap him, so he took a cab from the airport to the Lincoln Memorial. He had the driver go through a McDonald's drive-through window before dropping him at the Memorial Park. Roger had a pleasant lunch before the call came through. "A black Buick will pick you up in 10 minutes at the west entrance gate," the mysterious voice informed him. "I do hope you will be in the car. You seem to be my only friend at the moment," Roger said. "I am working in a call center, so no, I won't be in the car. Have a good day." The driver of the black Buick was definitely not the female voice. "I'm Bruno, and it's my job to deliver you safe to the debrief." "You are in for a boring day," Roger said. "Nobody knows I'm in the wind or where I went." "I'm used to boring," he replied, almost friendly. "Good, are we going to the office?" Roger asked. "We decided to use a safe house for the debrief," Bruno said. "Okay, you are the boss for now," Roger agreed. "First thing we need to do is close out your old life. We have an agent in there now moving money around and selling all your property. I expected that I wouldn't be going home. It just seems so final when you say someone is down there selling and donating my stuff," Roger said. "How about stopping to let me buy some personal items? You know, shampoo and stuff?" "Sure, we kind of expect that kind of thing," he said. "Any place in particular?" he asked. "No, any drugstore will do," Roger replied. "Just don't draw attention to yourself," Bruno said. "Then you shouldn't dog me. You don't look gay enough," Roger said. They stopped at a Walgreens drugstore. Roger bought a bar of soap and a bottle of shampoo, as well as a back-to-school pack of the rigid Bic pins. Roger also picked up a few candy bars. "Why the candy bars?" Bruno asked. "The takeout food only goes so far," Roger said. "You done this before?" Bruno asked. "Oh yes, so you haven't read my file?" Roger asked. "I just got the assignment this morning. I don't need to know much, since my only job is to make sure you stay alive during the debrief," Bruno said. "Then our goal is the same," Roger said. "Then let's get you out of the open," Bruno said. Roger sat back to watch the changing landscape. It went from the touristy part of town to the suburban commercial areas in just a few minutes, then to an almost vacant industrial park. Roger was a little concerned when Bruno pulled the Buick into the drive of a deserted plant. This would be a great place to kill a cop and then dispose of the body. "You wouldn't have to go outside at all," Roger suggested. "Or to hold off an army of thugs trying to kill a cop," Bruno suggested. "How would it be against an army of cops?" Roger asked. "Thugs, rogue cops, none of them have artillery," Bruno said. "Hopefully," Roger added. Bruno showed his ID to a camera at the gate to have it mysteriously slide open. He drove the Buick to the loading dock where again a door opened automatically for him. He drove inside the building before the door closed behind them. Roger swung the heavy passenger door open, then climbed out of the car. Roger had noticed that the doors seemed a little too heavy. He also noticed that the car had no pickup at all. He was sure it was because the Buick was bulletproof. "Is this car armor-plated?" Roger asked. "Inside the doors and under the roof, it has a special laminate of steel and Kevlar. It will stop almost anything smaller than a 50 cal, Bruno said. "Under the floor is a real blast plate. I hope that is how we travel everywhere." "So how is the gas mileage?" Roger asked. "Sucks, but who cares, we ain't paying for it. At least not directly," Bruno admitted. Roger followed Bruno to the second floor. There was a good view of the parking lot from what had once been the plant manager's office. They had turned it into the communications center, not the kind you find in a call center. It was more about computers and video screens. Roger had no idea how modern the CCTV system was, but it was well designed. The cameras covered almost every inch of the building inside and out. Bruno gave Roger the video tour. The building had been a plastic molding operation until the Obama administration, Bruno said. He pointed to a monitor showing a long empty room. That was the manufacturing area. Now it is where we park our cars. He walked to the phone, and without dialing said to someone, "Tell the man that we are here. If the shit comes rolling down, you pick up that phone and say Domino. That's our code to call in the troops." "I don't think that you are going to have that problem," Roger said. "I hope not. I generally only work with high-risk targets. That is why we had a car with armor and why I stopped at the Walgreens. It is one of the safest sites in the city," Bruno said. "Is it also why we had a tail car?" Roger asked. It was so obvious that it had to have been ours. Very observant. I bet you were a good cop, Bruno suggested. I was, but I was also a paranoid junkie. I'm not sure which made me look behind us, Roger admitted. Well, I have called in the pros from HQ to do the debrief, so that should start in a couple of hours, Bruno said. Your room is through that door. It ain't much, but it's only for a couple of days. Roger walked through the crude hole in the wall into another office. That office held a bed and desk. There was another raw hole in the wall which led into a bathroom. The bathroom even had a cheap plastic shower stall, a toilet, and a small sink all crammed into what had previously been an executive bathroom. The previous entrance doors were all nailed shut, no doubt. I see you spared no expense, Roger said just before he stretched out on the hard cot. He tested it because he had slept with one eye open the night before. Since he hadn't killed Hillary, and since he knew that he could not trust the town cops, he slept poorly even with his Glock 9mm on the nightstand. It was somewhere toward morning when he made the decision to run. Then an hour later, he decided to call the DOJ to advise them they hadn't finished with the police cleanup. Since they still held a large chunk of his money, he felt obligated to go along, which is what led him to the empty plastic plant. Roger didn't realize that he fell off to sleep until Bruno woke him. Get your head out of your butt, Roger. You are about to have company. Oh yeah, who is it going to be this time? When they get here, they will tell you. The first car just passed through the front gate. So come get a cup of coffee and get your head right, Bruno suggested. Okay. Roger went to the bathroom, then washed his face and hands before going into the observation room. He found the coffee pot on a small table well away from the equipment. He had smelled the coffee before he found it. Roger looked at the monitor showing the man and woman outside their car, obviously talking while waiting for someone or something. They waited long enough so that he was on his second cup when he heard a voice. Sam Abraham, the voice said. Bruno did something because the gate opened for Sam. Sam had managed to keep him working even when Roger was lost in his addiction. Sam had seemed to have a friendship with Roger. Once he was clean for a month, Roger realized that it was just a job with Sam. For a while, Roger felt betrayed, but he eventually came to understand that it was just business. He supposed that's what a hitman though as well before he pulled the trigger. When Sam joined the others, the three of them entered the stairway and headed up. Hello Roger, how you been? Sam asked, falling back into his handler persona. Since I got clean, I have been fine. Thanks for finally asking, Roger said. To be honest, I never thought we would meet again, Sam said. Life's just filled with surprises, Roger said. This is Lois Miles and Devin Reese, Sam said. There are 4 DOJ people here to interview one runaway cop. Sounds like overkill, Roger suggested. Well, you know, it's our slow season, Devin suggested, warm smile. Look, Dev, I went to all the interrogation classes, and I sat through a debriefing that lasted for 2 weeks. So, let's not pretend we care for each other. I'm just here to give you a heads up. You didn't kill the snake after all. When I have emptied my head of fact and suppositions, I'm going to head for parts unknown. Well, unknown to everyone, but the people who wire my reward check, Roger admitted. How about we stop playing whose is bigger and get on with it? That way we all can leave as soon as possible, Lois said. Sounds like a plan to me, Roger said. Roger knew that he was a little outnumbered. Since he seemed to always be holding the short end of the stick, he decided to make the best of it. Bruno held out his hand. Good luck, Roger. Even that seemed scripted. Thanks, Bruno. You will see to those changes back home for me? Roger asked. It was started. When you explained you wouldn't be going back, Bruno replied. Roger shook Bruno's hand, then turned to the others. Lead me to the waterboard, he said without a smile. Where they led him was to a room just past the bathroom. Roger entered first. It was a typical interview room. There was a wooden library table in the middle, and the requisite 3 chairs. As usual, there was a single chair on one side of the table and 2 on the other. Roger took the chair on the left side. He noticed the handcuff ring on the edge of the table. What? No cuffs? Roger asked. Not this time, Lois said. Today we are all good cops. That remains to be seen. Lois was close to Roger's age, maybe a year or 2 less. She was obviously not a field agent. She had to be more into the administrative area. She lacked the poise of a field agent. Psychologist, Roger thought. Devin, on the other hand, was filled with quiet bluster, just like every FBI agent he had ever met. There was something different about Devin, though. He didn't seem to have this stick-up-his-ass FBI mindset. Shall we begin? Lewis waited until Roger nodded. For the tape, this interview is with Detective Roger Hartman of the Capital City Police Department. It concerns an arson investigation being conducted there. We are interviewing Detective Hartman as part of our ongoing investigation pertaining to elements within the Capital City Police Department. So Detective, how long were you undercover with the capital city police? Lois asked. It isn't that simple. I worked for them starting when I was 21. I was 2 years on the beat before I was approached by the DOJ investigators. They wanted someone inside. So I agreed to watch, listen, and report what I found. I reported to my handler for 2 years working inside the department. There were many officers inside the department providing security service to drug dealers. They weren't just looking the other way. They actually drove patrol car up to the drug deal to provide security. Yes, we know all about that. There was a time when you became a dealer? Lois asked. Yes, several of us sold drugs from the squad cars. I am told the information I provided led to arrests that led all the way back to Mexico. Give the kid a pat on the back, Devin said. That is Detective Kid to you, Roger snapped at Devin. Who the hell are you anyway? I told you my name, he replied. You told me your bullshit name. Try telling the real one, Roger demanded. You know I can't do that, Devin said. Let's cut to the chase. What happened? A cop set fire to my house. The head of Internal Affairs to be exact. When I was reinstated, I was assigned to Internal Affairs Division. It was their way to keep me under the chief's thumb. The head of Internal Affairs for some reason set fire to my house. So you think it was on the orders of the chief of police? Lois asked. Well, Hillary wouldn't act on her own, unless my testimony would put away one of her friends. My thinking is she did it for whatever reason, when she knew no one would be home. She just drove up and tossed a Molotov cocktail through a side window and drove off. Very neat and clean, Devin said. Since you worked it out and she didn't deny it, she might have been making a cry for help. Lois said. Either way, she knows now that she is on he bubble. When I didn't show up for work today, she at least knows the shit is over, Roger said. So you are saying, we need to send a team to interview her, Lois suggested. I frankly don't care what you do with her. You obviously didn't get them all. I just decided that it was time for a career change. I'm telling you because you promised me a new identity. Now I need you to hold up your end. We are going to provide you with that, Lois said. Give us a day to check out what you have told us, then we will talk again. In the meantime, do I stay in this beautiful resort? Roger asked. What, you don't like the accommodations? Devin asked. It's little like a jail, and before you ask, I have indeed spent time in a jail. Roger said. What was it, 5 days, to establish your street creds, Devin said. It seemed longer, Roger said. I promise, you will be out of here the moment we make sure no one is after you. It most likely was intent on running you off, which they have done. Leave it to us. We will investigate this matter. In the meantime, we will work on relocating you. A U.S. Marshal Service rep will be to see you. We just need to assess the threat level to decide on our plans going forward. Bruno will stay with you here or in a motel until the Marshal's team shows up. Then it is a matter of relocating you. Do I need to warn you that there are no goodbyes? Lois said. Yeah, that's why I didn't do this earlier. I thought I wanted my old life back, but I guess I was wrong. Roger said. The good news is the local cops were the only ones involved. If it had been Paco Gomez, you would have been killed with no warning or mercy. Devin said. Thanks for that, but I think it was too much information, Roger replied. Now when do I become someone else? Soon, Lois said. The three of them just left after the brief information gathering interview. In their car, Lois and Devin didn't speak for the first few minutes. After a thick silence, Lois spoke. You really tried to get under his skin, she said. You knew that is what I do when you asked for me, he replied. He really is too smart to allow that. He did his undercover work and stood up. He wasn't going to rise to your bait. Like he said, he knew all the tricks. Lois suggested. Do you believe that the investigators missed something? Devin asked. Of course they did. We followed the infamous Judge Knapp model. We thought we could rehabilitate some of the existing cops. We should have just taken over the department and fired every one of them, Lois said. Yeah, there would have been so many civil lawsuits we would be in court till we retired. But that is hindsight. We need to go forward. Let's go down to Capital City and interview Hillary Bridges, Devin suggested. Of course, Hartman isn't going anywhere, Lois said. The geeks will still be building the ID for a few days. Have your people heard if there is an open contract on him? Not an open contract, but the cartels use terror to keep people in line. They will always be looking. One day, if he lets his cover slip, they will make an example of him. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. At least getting him away from Capital City will get him away from the Friends of Friends revenge, Lois said. I agree, it will at least buy him some time, Devin said. So do you need anything? Bruno asked Roger. Just to find out who I'm going to be, Roger replied. I can't help you there. How about dinner? What should I order? Bruno asked. I don't care, Roger said. He took the laptop Bruno supplied to his tiny bed. He leaned against the wall and tried to check his messages. He had been blocked out. He didn't even try a second time. Instead, he read the news on the Capital City Records website. While he checked on the outside world, Bruno's shift ended. A tall man with red hair brought the takeout with him. It was almost midnight when Roger became bored with the internet and went to bed. He knew that he was being monitored, so he slept comfortably in what he hoped was a secure environment. Time to wake up and greet the new day, a very blonde older woman said. I'm Jan Brewer with the U.S. Marshal Service. I'm going to be helping you move on. I'm going to start by moving you to a more comfortable place. Okay, Roger said. He decided on the spot that Jan was competent. Snap judgments are usually wrong, so he planned to continue being careful. First of all, do you have a preference for breakfast? She asked. None, Roger said. I can find something on any menu. Since it is Saturday morning, let's try waffles. My kids love waffles on Saturday. Jan said. I'm easy as far as food goes, so let's do waffles, Roger said. Bring your backpack. We won't be coming back here, she said. After breakfast, we will find you a more comfortable place. It will take a couple of days to build an identity. Roger knew that she wouldn't be finding him a place. She would simply drive him to the pre-selected place. He didn't care as long as it had a more comfortable bed. The cot was designed to be uncomfortable. In a real interrogation situation, the interrogator would want the victim sleep-deprived and disoriented. The waffle restaurant had a lot more class than the Waffle House truck stop-style roadside restaurant, where he usually went for waffles. So is someone working on the office computers today? Roger asked. If you were in an emergency situation, there would be. The boss thought we could give everyone their regular days off. So if there is anything you want to do, speak up. You aren't going to like it, Roger warned. Try me. I'm pretty flexible, Jan said. I would like to get some coffee to go and sit by a lake somewhere alone. I would like some more time to adjust to the idea that I just walked away from my old life. I have had stranger requests, Jan said. I'll bet, but I won't ask you to be a pimp or to sleep with me, Roger said. I'm going to hold you to that, Jan said with a smile. So first we will get you settled into the new nest. Then we can either go shopping or give you some alone time, your choice. Thanks, Jan, and I promise to be good, Roger said. Since she was on an expense account, Roger allowed Jan to pick up the check. Roger also felt the government owed him. The first stop after their breakfast was a large square 3-story building. It was a people warehouse covered vinyl siding, trying to make it appear less so. The sign beside the entrance stated that it was an all-suite hotel. Also, according to the sign, it offered free cable TV, HBO, and high-speed internet services. It was a place for the out-of-town business traveler to relax between meetings. Most of the rentals were to people like himself, Roger imagined. Well, not exactly like him. He expected they were people needing a place for less than a week. He couldn't imagine staying there long-term. Roger dropped his backpack in the suite, which had obviously been previously booked. Hell, it might even be a permanent rental as a safe house. Jan drove him to a big-box department store where had purchased more underwear and a few more t-shirts with logos on them. He also purchased 3 pairs of Dickie work pants. The pair he wore were stained from coffee and food. He hadn't had many meals recently that weren't on wheels. While he was shopping, he noticed one of those fishnet bags, the kind the European shoppers carry grocery shopping. He bought one thinking it would make a good folding laundry hamper. Those items went on the company credit card. Which company, he wasn't quite sure. Some of the items were items that Jan tossed into the cart. She added soap, shampoo, toothpaste, and deodorant were in the checkout as well. I brought my own toothbrush, Roger commented, seeing a new one on the conveyor belt. I didn't, Jan said simply. With their purchases stored in the trunk, Jan started the car. She didn't leave the parking lot right away, because there was a McDonald's restaurant in the parking lot. She drove through the takeout lane where she ordered the large cardboard coffee cube. The sign on the entrance to the park read, County Reservoir No Swimming. It was one of those green highway signs which struck him as being a little unusual. Nonetheless, Jan parked the car beside an office building. The coffee is for both of us, so take a cup. When you need more, come back. I'll be here playing my music, she said. You won't be bored? Roger asked. Probably, but the alternative is to talk to you. You don't want that, and I don't either, to be honest. I'm not your friend. I'm not sure what the job is, but it's what I do. I really do a little of everything. Well, I hope your number one priority is to keep me alive. I guess you don't have to be my friend to do that. Roger took a coffee cup and filled it. She had asked the girl working the drive-through window for the, so he planned to carry 2 cups to a picnic table. See that empty table? The one straight ahead 10 yards and off to our left about 20. You can watch the water from there, Jan said. And you can watch me, Roger said under his breath before he turned his back for the walk to the table. He carried a coffee in each hand. He sat for some time with his coffee and thought about his future. His plan was to take the new ID, then just walk away. He had the reward money, so he didn't need to work if he lived sensibly. He didn't want to draw attention to himself, so the money would last long enough. So where am I going to go? He asked himself. The wanted warm weather, but that wouldn't be a good idea. All those Gulf Coast states were cartel territory. Most of the northern states had become a battlegrounds for urban guerrillas. The Mid-Atlantic was the most likely place for him to be recognized a former acquaintance. Canada was a possibility, as was a Caribbean island. Canada was cold and the Caribbean was too close to South America, so they were all less than a perfect choice. There was also the fact that he would go nuts trying to sit home and do nothing. He had all these thoughts earlier, but then so did the DOJ, he knew. The night sitter replaced Jan Saturday night at 9 p.m. They spent 2 hours watching the TV provided by the residence hotel. He was an opinionated prick, Roger thought. At 11 p.m. Roger went to the bedroom, showered, then went to bed. He left Tate watching the late news shows. Roger didn't want to discuss politics, which was why he left. Roger slept pretty well. He felt like he knew what was going on. They had him to disappear pretty well. They were also hiding him just as well. Roger seemed to relax completely Sunday. He relaxed enough to be bored. Not even the change of shift at 9 a.m. helped. Since neither of his babysitters could say anything interesting to him, it was obviously his problem. Monday was a repeat of Sunday more or less. Jan informed me that sometime during Monday, we would be meeting with a man from the DOJ, one who would actually begin working on the new ID. The plan was to begin the serious immediately after the meeting. Be nice to him, Roger. He is going to make your new life possible, Jan said. I'm always nice, Roger said. Sure, never a bit sarcastic, she replied with a laugh. Just be careful what you ask for. They have some pretty extreme lives they would like to put you onto. I think they pull them off the shelves every chance they get. I always thought I would like a houseboat, or maybe to be a pot farmer, Roger said. He has read your file, so stay away from jokes like that one. He does his best work when he is motivated. Stay away from any indication that you might be ambiguous about drugs, Jan suggested. How about a park ranger by day and superhero at night, Roger suggested. The possibilities are endless. You have been warned, so just keep what I said in mind, Jan repeated. She turned to the TV, so Alex let his mind run free. He seriously could be a game warden in South Dakota or something like it. I might like that, Roger thought. It was 11 a.m. when Jan came to the bedroom door. The meeting is for noon at a picnic shelter at an Arlington reservoir. Let's stop by and get some fried chicken for a picnic while we talk. I sent a message to see how the creator felt about that. He agreed, so we are providing lunch. Isn't there some rule against that sort of thing? Roger asked. Probably, but you are the one who insisted, didn't you? She asked. Of course, Roger agreed. Roger Hartman, this is Seth, your new best friend, Jan said. Hello, Seth, Roger said. Hello, Roger, and that was an exaggeration. I hope to be a friend, but I won't be involved in your life that often. So let's get down to it. While Seth set up his computer, Jan unpacked the food, and Roger looked at the sailboats on the reservoir. So I read your biography from when you were working undercover for DOJ. Is there anything you would like to add before we begin the in-depth Q&A? Seth asked. Nothing, Roger said. Okay, then Janet, wouldn't you like to go up on the office deck? There is a great view on from their balcony, Seth commented. In order to keep you safe, no one will know all there is to know. People will stay in their own compartment. If anyone asks you to reveal anything about your new identity, call me immediately. Do you understand? Seth asked. Yes, I have it, Roger said. You will remain Roger Hartman till you leave DC. When you do leave, you will be someone else entirely. You must completely break ties with your past. No phone calls, no email, nothing unless you have a death wish, Seth said, being dramatic. I understand, Seth, Roger said. I'm going to lay out your background, and you tell me if there is any part of the fiction you can't maintain. The best fiction is one based on a real person with a real past. At least up to a point, then we just fill in the blanks until we reach the present. Do you mean I am going to assume the identity of someone else? Does that mean I'm going to bump into myself one day? Roger asked. Maybe in heaven or hell. Your doppelganger is dead. He served in Afghanistan when you did. He had no family. So when he died, there will be no mention of his death in the records once we doctor them. To keep it simple, we chose someone who is your age. Okay, I can understand that. So now what? Roger asked. You were a Marine sniper, so they knew you drove a truck. Seth handed me a flash drive. Take this home and memorize the content. Call it homework. It contains all I could do alone. It doesn't contain anything except what you did prior to 2005. That is when you were discharged after your enlistment ended. That is where the fiction begins. I will have that ready for lesson 2 by Wednesday, Seth informed him. Thanks, Seth, Roger said. Nobody sees that file, not even our people, Seth reminded him. Now let's find Janet, so I can say my goodbyes. So how did it go? Jan asked. It went just fine. How about we stop on the way home to get a milkshake? If you have kids, you are bound to know somewhere that has good milkshakes, Roger suggested. I do, she said. The problem is I have a fitness evaluation in a month. So? Roger asked. So I need to lose a minimum of 5 pounds, Jan suggested. Well, I hope that isn't going to be part of my life. I have been eating like a horse recently, Roger said. Reformed junkies do that. That's the kind of thing I have to stop doing, he thought. Okay, tell you what, since I don't have a car, I will drink it in my room. If you can find a drive-through milkshake restaurant, you won't even have to see it, Roger Everhart, Hartman suggested. My kids love the donut barn. They sell milkshakes and they have a drive-through window. After the ice cream and donut, Roger spent the evening in the toilet. It was a large price to pay for a couple of donuts and a milkshake, he decided. Jan packed up and was waiting impatiently for her relief several minutes early. What's up? Do you have a date? Roger asked. That is none of your business, Jan replied nervously. Oh my God, you do have a date. Must be another Marshall. Roger guessed. Did you tell your husband? He asked. Of course not, she replied. I will thank you not to mention this to Tate. Why would I, and who is Tate? Roger asked. Tate is your night babysitter, she said. Is that his name? I wonder why I didn't remember that, Roger said. Roger had an urgent need to use the toilet again. He was in the bathroom when Jan left and Tate arrived. Good night, Roger, Jan said through the door. Good night, Jan, he replied. When Roger went back into the bedroom, Tate was in the living room with a take-out coffee cup on the table beside him. He wasn't drinking from it. He wouldn't be drinking designer coffee ever again. Trey was extremely dead. Roger had no idea what protocol was in a case like that. His protocol was to hide the flash drive in the toilet tank, then to take Tate's weapon. Only then did he dial the marshal's office, after which he dialed 911. He wanted bodies between himself and the bad guys ASAP. He figured the more the better. When the cops arrived first, Roger surrendered with his hands on top of his head. He for sure knew the drill. He told the first officers on the scene that Tate was a U.S. Marshal. He also told them he knew nothing about it. They would need to call the marshal's office to find out what was going on. So you aren't going to tell us anything? The black detective asked. You don't have any ID on you. So who are you? He asked. I am going to have to refer you to the U.S. Marshal's office, but the Marshal's service should be here anytime, Roger said. Roger heard voices in the hall, so he figured the feds had arrived. What happened here? He asked the detective. Well, Deputy Tate was stabbed at the door. Then it looks like he was dragged to the chair. Other than that, we know nothing. Seems this gentleman isn't talking. The detective said. What a cluster shit, the deputy said. My thoughts exactly, Roger said. You shut up, the detective said. Back off, he is only following protocol, the deputy said. We need to get him away from here, out a back door or something. You want to put a block bag over his head, the detective said. We don't have black bags in the trunk of our cars, the deputy asked. I have a hoodie and some big reflective sunglasses, Roger said. Get them and get ready to move, the deputy said. Bull, he is a material witness in a homicide, the detective said. Listen closely. I'm going to take him to your station, where he will go directly into the interview room. We can both talk to him. You don't need to arrest him, and he will cooperate. But we have to be there, and he has to be protected at all times. Is that clear, or do I need to call your chief? The deputy U.S. Marshal asked. Yeah, you do need to call him, and do it before he goes to bed, the detective suggested. Dial him, the deputy said. The local policeman moved away with a cell phone. He went into the hallway, while the marshal stayed behind to talk to Roger. This never happened to me, he said. Well, don't feel too bad. It never happened to me either, obviously. It is really strange, Roger said. How so? The deputy asked. Stop right there, the detective said. We are going down to the station. The chief and some more feds are going to meet us there. Then we are going to find out what happened. That was our first offer, the deputy marshal said. Could we just get out of here before World War III starts? Roger asked. Roger didn't say another word until he was in the police station. He found himself in the interrogation room with a cup of coffee while he waited for them all to assemble. Okay, so what do we call you? The detective asked. Roger looked to the Deputy Federal Attorney General. She just nodded. My name is Roger, That's all, the deputy U.S. attorney said. Roger here is involved in an undercover operation. That is why we are taking custody of the interview tape. We have already agreed to that, the detective from the crime scene said. I want both you and Roger to know what we are doing to protect him, the chubby blonde said. Okay, then just Roger. What happened in that motel? The local detective asked. I ate a couple of Bavarian cream donuts and a chocolate milkshake earlier today. By the time Jan was packing up to leave, I had been in and out of the bathroom for some time. At 9 p.m., I was in the bathroom. I heard Jan say goodnight and then the door close. I didn't hear anything for a few minutes, then a commotion. When I came out of the bathroom, Tate was dead and the door was open. I bolted the door and called 911 and the marshal's emergency number. The police arrived first, then the detective here showed up, and finally the deputy. I have a feeling your next question will be, if this was a hit, why I am still alive? I've been asking myself that since I walked out that bathroom door. Roger said. So, you were there. What do you think happened? The city detective asked. With the timing and the fact that I could hear everything, I think whoever killed Tate came in with him at shift change. Why and how I don't know. They somehow incapacitated Jan, and then they kidnapped her. They didn't even know I was in the place. That's my number one theory. Why they wanted her is anybody's guess. So, what are you doing to find her? Roger asked. You don't get to ask questions. The local cop demanded. She isn't answering her cell. Did she see the secret file? The deputy asked. If the cops didn't find it, the flash drive is still secure. I dropped it in the toilet tank. If these clowns have decent lab people, they have it now. Roger said. If you found that drive, you need to return it without viewing it, the deputy said to the detective. Roger decided that they were serious about keeping him safe. He had seen the contents of the flash drive and knew there was nothing of value to anyone else on it. There are patrolmen still on the scene. I will call one of them, the detective said. He made the call on a radio that he carried everywhere. He put everything on hold until he finally reported, "We have it." "Good. Have them bring it here." "The contents are classified," the deputy said. "So are you finished with me?" Roger asked. "Not quite, stick around," the detective said as he arose from his chair and left the room. "Tell me if they found Jan and her family, and I'll tell you something I didn't tell them," Roger whispered to the deputy. Her apartment was empty, but there was no sign of a struggle. "Do you think she killed Tate?" the deputy asked. "I don't know," Roger whispered. "What happened to the fancy camera you had in the living room?" "It went out just before shift change. The techies were troubleshooting the system before we called to alert Jan. Your call came before they finished," the deputy said. "How convenient," Roger said. "The last tape does show you on the toilet and her walking to the door. It shows nothing after that. Did the whole building's Wi-Fi system stop working, or just your cameras?" Roger demanded. "You know we do know how to do an investigation," the deputy said. "So?" Roger asked. "You are officially a suspect," the deputy replied. "You have images of me sitting on the toilet when your cameras failed, but I somehow get myself out of the toilet and overpower Tate, and Janet then make her disappear. Damn, I need to take that show to Vegas," Roger said. "Yeah, there is also no answer on her cell phone," the deputy said. "That's not good," Roger stated the obvious. "That puts me back in the jackpot. I don't understand what they want with Janet. She doesn't know anything." "It may not be Paco. She has worked on other things," the deputy suggested. "If that is not the case, it's good news for me and bad for Janet." "Well, I'm sure you can figure it out," Roger said. In his mind, it was related to Paco. What surprised Roger was that Paco didn't have her give up the motel's address. He could then come in after she left and just kill them all. He could also have waited till he had a new ID and been relocated, then come for him. It just made no sense. Roger believed that Janet knew something was about to happen. She might not have known what, but she knew something. It was also possible that she killed Tate for some other reason. They might find out at any minute that Janet was a family annihilator. That didn't sit well, but it was possible. It was just as likely a Paco Gomez hit gone wrong. Those guys weren't criminal masterminds. What they were was a bunch of super thugs more vicious than the other thugs, which didn't look good for Jan. It was after midnight when Roger appealed to the camera in the empty interrogation room. "Hey, could I get some coffee, a glass of water, and some Tylenol and some Aleve? I have a terrible backache." He waited, but no one appeared to help him. It was as he expected. He was just being detained, not interrogated. When he knocked on the door, a uniformed cop said, "Yes?" Roger made the same request to him. The cop just nodded his understanding, then closed the door with the click of a lock. Roger didn't like being at the mercy of anyone, least of all the local police in a town he never heard of before a few days ago. It must have meant sending someone out for the drugs. Most likely, it was a deputy U.S. Marshal who went for the drugs. It was at least 20 minutes and might have been more, Roger thought. Since he had no watch and there was no clock on the wall, he supposed that their absence was part of the plan. When the drugs came, it was 15 minutes of more before I got even the slightest relief. It wasn't real relief, but it did feel better. Roger had his head on the table and was near the sweet oblivion of sleep when the man entered the room. "I'm Agent Pelham with the FBI, and I'm here to help you," the tall, thin man suggested. "You know, Pelham, I'm beginning to understand what they mean when someone says, 'I'm from the government and I'm here to help you.' You should be very afraid." Roger said, "Wow, now that is original. Would rather I not be here?" Pelham asked. "Right this moment you could hand a Glock and give me a 5-minute head start, and I think I would be just as safe," Roger said. "I'll put your request through to the bureau. Where should we mail the new ID?" he asked. "I'll drop you a line with the address," Roger said. In his heart, he knew they would never go for it. "I think not. If you want the new ID, you cooperate," Pelham said. "I kind thought you might feel that way." "So does the Marshal Service have the drive now?" Roger asked. "They do, and somehow they know it hasn't been opened, since it went into that toilet tank," Pelham said. "It was password protected, so they would have had to crack that. I doubt that the local cops had either the time or the expertise to do that," Roger guessed. "That too," Pelham suggested. "So you ready to get out of here?" "Several hours past ready," Roger answered. "This time you will be in an FBI safe house, and there will be no field trips, so get your mind right. The people you need to see will just show up. There will be no appointments." "I knew it. You guys think I had something to do with it. Before you say anything, I would at least wonder about it myself," Roger admitted. "Good. We don't see any reason you would have sold out, but someone might have recognized you. Our money is on Janet turning, but you never know. You came in dressed in jeans and a nylon hoodie and those silly sunglasses. It is hard to imagine anything that would draw more attention, but we probably have it. You are going out in a cop uniform, actually in a SWAT uniform. 5 FBI SWAT team members will enter the building and 5 will go out with a prisoner. The prisoner will wear SWAT team member jeans and a green nylon parka, but no silly glasses. If they can run facial recognition, they can make him, but not you. So get dressed. You are going to be an FBI agent for a few hours," Pelham explained. "When you are prepared, 99% of the time nothing happens, but 1% of the time it does." The move was part of the 99%. It would off without a hitch. Roger found himself in another repurposed building. His new home had previously been an auto storage yard, judging from all the damaged automobiles in the fenced-in yard. There was a 2-bay concrete block building behind the fence as well. There was a keypad lock and a facial recognition system, obviously, since we had traded the SWAT armored car for a plain Chevy sedan. Pelham and Roger waited at the gate for someone to do something to cause the all-clear buzzer to buzz. Once had clearance, we drove into the yard. "Just curious what would have happened if they didn't recognize you? Would we have been vaporized?" Roger asked. "Your family wouldn't have to had worry about a funeral," Pelham said. "Very impressive," I said, knowing it was all bullshit. I had recognized the 2-foot wide break in the concrete. I was absolutely sure that it would flip automatically if not turned off. My guess was it contained spike strips. There might be a flashbang type device as well. Something to incapacitate the occupants till people from the shop could come to assault the car. My guess is the car would then become part of the lawn art, Roger said. "Something like that," Pelham admitted. When they pulled the Chevy in a space between the junk, Pelham opened the door so Roger did the same. "Honey, we are home," he said into his cell phone. Roger said when he went inside the garage. The previous office area had a large window that overlooked the mechanic's work area. The office area was being used as the control center, while the repair bay had been converted to a room filled with cots. "The FBI is planning to sleep here with me?" Roger asked. "Sometimes we need a place to crash, and this is it." "Don't worry, there won't be anybody here for the next couple of days," Pelham informed Roger. "The marshal's deputy assured me you would be gone by the weekend. Since this is hardly a 5-star hotel, I will look forward to the improvement in my living conditions," Roger said. "And I will look forward to you moving on," Pelham said with a smile. Roger spent 2 days with the FBI on a very short leash before the ID guru showed up. He had only a 5-minute warning, but it was enough since the only thing to do at the garage was to memorize the details of his backstory. "Roger, how are you?" he asked. "They told me about the excitement you were involved with. I'm sorry you wound up in the middle of a domestic issue." "What are you talking about?" Roger asked. It looks as thought Janet and Tate were far more than colleagues. Janet planned to run off with him to the Caribbean. Something happened because Tate called it off. Janet killed him, then went to the Caribbean alone. They picked up her trail in Miami as she tried to board an international flight, Seth informed him. She just left her family, Roger asked. Yes, love is a terrible disease, Seth said. So I hear. I must be immune, Roger said. Guess that comes from never belonging anywhere. Seth asked Roger several things about his new identity. Roger must have passed because Seth handed him another flash drive. This is your new life from 2006 to present, Seth said. You memorize it while I figure out where to drop you. Do you have any preference? All of Roger's ideas were not to go, so he answered, not really. For a couple of weeks, life was pretty miserable. Pelham kept him inside the garage until Seth returned. Hello, Roger, I am glad to see you are alive and well. I would hate to think I wasted all this hard work, Seth said after 12 days' absence. He passed Roger another flash drive. I had no idea it took so long to create a new ID, Roger said as a criticism. Life is life that. You can do it fast, or you can do it right. Since your life depends on how good this ID is, I thought you might prefer it done right. Truth is, I do want it done right, or I would have paid a couple of grand for some papers that would stand up to a quick online search. It would have been much less trouble. Yes, but you probably could never work again. At least not at anything you would want to do, Seth said. You know, the first thing I'm going to research is my last run-in with the law, so why not tell me what happened? Roger demanded. The official story is that Janet was having an affair with Tate. He tried to end it, but she didn't want to have any of it. She had already decided to kill him and walk out the door. So she contacted Paco before she killed him, then left the door open for Paco's men. His hit team got delayed at the front desk. Before they could get up to the room, you called the cops and had Tate's gun. The whole time the cops were on the scene, Paco's team was in the hotel. It was truly a cluster shit. Now you know more than anyone outside the investigation team. She had to contact Paco to sell me out. He couldn't have known I was in town otherwise. That's right, that was why it was so poorly planned. Paco had less than a day to arrange it. His team were street thugs. She passed on the name of the hotel and the suite number. There she left the door ajar for them. They were supposed to be waiting in the stairwell and rush into the room and shoot the place up. The problem was, by the time the information got down to the junkie thugs, someone had lost the suite number. That's what they were trying to get from the clerk when the cops rolled in, sirens roaring. Like I said, it was a cluster shit. Have they got Janet in custody? Roger asked. No, but they are doing a calling all cars kind of thing, Seth informed him. What? Roger asked. Didn't you ever see an old black and white movie? Never mind, Seth said. So are you ready to find out my plan for you? Sure, give me the information. I will attempt to assimilate it, Roger agreed. When you leave here, no one will use your real name or your short-term cover name. As of the moment you step into the terminal, you will be Peter Sims. I assume you know your background by now? Seth said. It's been 3 weeks. Of course I know it right up till today. I came back from the Middle East to join the FBI. I worked there for the past 8 years in the research department. I have decided to move on. The work is just too detailed for me. Not to mention too boring, Roger said. Good. Those false facts are pretty close to the real fact, except for the boring part. I expect boring would be nice right now, Seth suggested. You better believe it would. I'm ready to be just plain Pete Sims, he said. Take your final flash drive on the plane with you. You can familiarize yourself with it there. Your ticket is in the envelope. There is also $1,000 in there. I know you have 10,000 of you own, but that is immaterial. There is an address on the flash drive, and the apartment key is in the envelope. So good luck, Peter, and I mean that, Seth said. Do your shopping when you get to your new home. Roger extended his hand, then said, I hope we never meet again. No offense intended. None taken, Seth said, then walked out of the garage. The plan was for Roger to leave right away for the airport. He found the tube of superglue, then used it to disguise his features. Cameras are not three-dimensional, so a two-dimensional scar or a few painted-on moles screw up the facial recognition software. He did a nasty-looking scar on his forehead and several moles. Then he wore a baseball cap and a wig, all courtesy of the FBI. Roger planned to dump all of them after he arrived at his destination. He was almost enjoying the cat and mouse game. Well, at least till he remembered that his life was the prize. Roger had $200 in the pockets of his new cargo pants. He and Janet had purchased them at Walmart. Janet had purchased them 2 weeks before, and he never worn them. He also had a new wallet, filled with all kinds of new identification papers. It was stored in one of those big pockets. In another of the big pockets, he carried the mini tablet supplied by the FBI for reading during the flight. The file was all about his new home. His backpack also contained $10,800. He had the money rolled inside a long-sleeve sweatshirt, 3 sets of underwear, and his toothbrush inside the backpack. I'm as ready to go as possible, Peter thought. The flight was very routine as far as Peter could tell. Please place your seats in the upright position. We will be landing at the Detroit Metropolitan International Airport in 5 minutes. The local time is 10 p.m. and the temperature is 22 degrees, the blonde female flight attendant announced. Well, the weather would almost match his clothes, Peter thought. For sure it would give him an excuse to pull the hood up on the heavy navy blue wool coat. The hood over his head, and the scars and glasses would take care of the cameras. For sure it would in a broad random search perimeter. If they pared down the search perimeter, it would be anyone's guess. The well-thought-out instructions called for him to take a taxi to a suburb of Detroit. It was supposed to be a rather artsy neighborhood on the edge of the downtown area of the city. Seth's information had it well away from the many blighted areas. The taxi dropped me at the Don Juan apartment building. It was a masonry building of 8 floors. It neither looked like a project, nor like a nice apartment building. It was more a blue-collar stopover place. It had to have been built in the World War II era. Peter went up the stairs to the 3rd floor carrying his backpack. He easily found the door to apartment 310. The key from Seth's envelope fit, so he went in. Inside, he found one large room with a tumor on the right side, containing a bathroom and huge closet. There was a window over the tub. The tub had one of those European external pipe showers. The large closet area just outside the bath had numerous hanging rack and shelves. Along the rear exterior wall was an area with a stove, refrigerator, sink, and cabinets. That wall also contained the only other window in the place. Both of the windows were small and seemed to have a sheet of plexiglass over the interior to kill the drafts. Those storm windows seemed to be held into place by some type of spring clips in the corners. It was late and Peter was bushed. Since there was no bed or any other furniture in the place, Peter curled up on the floor. He used his backpack for a pillow and his coat for a blanket. It was actually worse than the garage by a bunch. The next morning, he hailed his very first cab ever. It was just outside the apartment building. "Take me to the nearest Walmart," he demanded of the Middle Eastern man. The drive took him past a long line of empty retail stores. There were a lot more repurposed stores as well. Restaurants turned into internet gambling centers or ethnic convenience stores. The price for the ride was almost $10 for the ride, so Peter decided to buy some kind of transportation at his first opportunity. Inside Walmart, he bought an airbed, a tiny TV, a folding chair, a folding table, 1 giant bath towel, 2 deli-type sandwiches, and a dozen donuts. He would like to have more, but the 3-story climb changed his mind. He had no desire to ride in a 100-year-old elevator. He made a compromise by buying an urban hand truck. It was a basket on 2 wheels. He could get most of the items up in one trip. He watched the route of the minivan taxi as it drove the 5 miles back to the Don Juan apartments. When he got out to load the handcart, he found that if he had a place to store his items, he could have made 2 or 3 trips up the stairs dragging the hand truck behind. That is going to be a real asset, he thought. During the afternoon, he went for a walk. He pulled the truck behind him a while, then he pushed it as a care a while. He felt sure since he needed everything, the cart would be a good idea. He wasn't interested in looking cool. He passed a consignment store. With the Detroit economy, he expected there would be a lot of those around. In the dark and dreary store, he bought a blanket and comforter. He decided to hold out for new sheets and towels. Since the proprietor sold dry goods as well as consignment items, Peter bought a 12-pack of soap and some toothpaste. He also bought an electric tea kettle so that he could make coffee. By the time he arrived back at the apartment, it was time for dinner. The deli-style ham and cheese sandwich from Walmart won out over the roast beef and cheese sandwich, also from Walmart. After dinner, he wasn't quite sure how to do it, but he went in search of a Wi-Fi signal. He found a network called Don Juan. He tried and found that he didn't need a password. It was sort of like an internet cafe. His browsing was a terrible experience with only the mini tablet to view things. According to his information file, he was supposed to go an office building in downtown the next day. Since he couldn't find a working map on the internet that was tablet-friendly, he decided to trust a cab driver, then took a shower and went to bed. Dear listeners, the next and the final part will be out in a few minutes. Meanwhile, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.